In the land where cherry blossoms fall like whispers and silence weighs heavier than time, ancient shadows still breathe beneath temple stones. Forgotten gods, buried swords, haunted dull sand secrets no emperor could kill. Tonight, you won't find answers. Just 100 questions older than memory, echoing through a sleeping Japan. So close your eyes and don't listen too hard, because some mysteries dream louder than the living. This is 100 Ancient Japan Mysteries to Fall Asleep to. The Yonaguni Monument. There's an island off the coast of Okinawa that vanishes into the waves like a secret held too long. Beneath its surface, a staircase carved from stone descends into the deep blue, as though inviting you into a sunken world that never asked to be found. The locals call it the Yonaguni Monument. The world calls it a mystery. Divers whisper about its symmetry terraces, pillars, and platforms aligned like the blueprint of a forgotten civilization, but no one can prove it was ever built. And no one can prove it wasn't. It was first spotted in 1986, when a scuba diver chasing hammerhead sharks stumbled upon what looked like a submerged ziggurat. It didn't make sense. The lines were too straight, the edges too precise, the formations too intentional. Marine geologist Masaaki Kimura spent decades diving the site, convinced it was the remnant of a 10,000-year-old city swallowed by the sea. He mapped out roads, temples, and even what he claimed were walls etched with ancient symbols. Others dismissed it all as Pareidolia brain's tendency to see design in chaos, structure in randomness. Just rocks, they said, just coincidence. But even skeptics can't ignore the oddities. Giant megaliths stacked like Jenga blocks, sheer cliffs that drop at perfect right angles, corridors wide enough to march armies through if you squint. It's not a ruin. It's a message. But from who? The Jomon people, the earliest known inhabitants of Japan, had neither the tools nor the inclination to construct such monoliths. And yet, if natural erosion is to blame, why doesn't it mimic the haphazard patterns seen elsewhere? Why here, and only here, does nature carve like an architect? Then there's the problem of the depth. The monument lies 26 meters below the surface. To be built above sea level, as its formation suggests, it would have needed to predate the last ice age. That's older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, older than recorded history. If it's man-made, it's rewriting the human timeline. And if it's natural, it's the most unnatural-looking natural formation on Earth. Of course, Japanese officials have mostly stayed silent, perhaps because the ocean is good at keeping its secrets. The waters around Yonaguni are rough, unpredictable. Divers report sudden currents that tug them deeper, as if something down there doesn't want to be disturbed, as if the past is still awake, watching. And maybe that's why no one touches the steps anymore, because they're not just stairs, they're thresholds. Which leads us to a different kind of threshold, where the ancient ends and the otherworldly begins, where a woman arrives on shore in a vessel no one can explain, and she speaks a language no one alive remembers. The Utsuro-bune incident. In the winter of 1803, a strange vessel drifted ashore on the eastern coast of Hitachi Province. What is now Ibaraki Prefecture. Fishermen, hardened by storms and salt and silence, gathered at the beach, expecting a wreck. What they found instead was a craft like none they'd ever seen. Round as a pot, smooth as lacquered wood, it gleamed with metal bands and glass windows. And inside sat a woman, pale, beautiful, silent, clutching a box she refused to let go. They called it the Utsuro-bune hollow ship. It was shaped like an incense burner, 3.3 meters high and 5.5 meters wide, topped with a dome and trimmed with plates of brass. The interior was decorated with symbols. The villagers didn't recognize curved lines, interlocking triangles, starbursts that resembled constellations. but matched no known sky. The woman inside was clothed in strange fabric, neither silk nor hemp, and her hair was red as blood, long and tangled. Her features didn't resemble any tribe or nation the locals knew. She spoke no Japanese, no Chinese, no Ainu, nothing that could be understood. When asked about the box she carried, she merely shook her head and held it tighter. Some guessed it contained the ashes of a dead lover. Others whispered it was a relic, something too sacred or dangerous to open. Either way, she never let it go. The story appears in multiple 19th century texts, Toin Shosetsu, Ume no Chiriichi, describing her arrival with eerie consistency. But none agree on what happened to her. Some say she was led back into the sea with her ship, pushed gently toward wherever it came from. Others claim she was taken inland, interrogated, studied, then lost. No records confirm her burial, nor the ship's preservation. Historians have tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was a foreign castaway. Russian? Dutch? A woman fleeing persecution? But then why the symbols? Why the box? And why the craft, with its precise rivets and seamless construction technology that didn't yet exist in that part of the world? Conspiracy theorists, of course, love this one. A time traveler, an alien, a being from a parallel timeline who crossed over in a moment of cosmic confusion. The Utsurobune, they say, wasn't just a boat. It was a capsule, a tomb, a prison, a message in a bottle from a version of Earth that never happened. And maybe that's why she wouldn't let go of the box. Maybe it wasn't hers. Maybe it was what brought her here. Or maybe she knew where she had landed and what had landed before her, like a stone or a monolith, or something even heavier that shouldn't float, but did. The Masuda no Iwafune. High in the mountains of Asuka, nestled among the trees like a half-remembered dream, lies a monolith that shouldn't exist. It's called the Masuda no Iwafune, or the rock ship of Masuda, and it looks like a massive stone spacecraft crash, landed into the past, and gave up halfway through re-entry. It weighs an estimated 800 tons, carved with unnerving precision straight from the bedrock. Rectangular, imposing, and inexplicable. There is no inscription, no tools nearby, no evidence of how or why it was made. It measures 11 meters long, 8 meters wide, and 4.7 meters tall, yet it's not just a block of stone. The surface is smooth, smoothed in a way that suggests not just labor, but obsession. On top, 2 square holes sit side by side, like sockets for something long removed, or waiting to be inserted. The front is carved with a deliberate step, like a ramp or a throne base. But there are no ruins around it. No temple, no palace, no tomb. It just is. Some say it was a platform, others a tomb, still others a forgotten prototype of some larger construction that never happened. But nothing else like it exists in the entire region. It is singular, stubbornly alone, a one-off from a culture that left no manual behind. It's not a boulder that was moved into place. It is the place, carved from the natural mountain bedrock, which means the people who made it had no option to flip it, rotate it, or correct mistakes. And yet, there are no mistakes, no signs of incomplete chiseling, just clean lines and symmetrical voids. As if the creator was following a plan they'd executed hundreds of times before, only they hadn't. Not here, not anywhere. The Masuda no Iwafune has no siblings. There are whispers about its alignment with celestial bodies, about solstice shadows that fall just so, ancient astronomers testing a calendar carved into the earth itself. But if so, the calendar tells us only one date, unfinished. It was built for something that never happened, or for something that happened once, and never again. Even the name is a riddle. Iwafune means stone ship, but it sits atop a hill, not anywhere near water. Who builds a ship on a mountain, unless it wasn't meant to sail water? unless the sea it crossed was time, or space, or something even more fluid. And the holes on top? Maybe they held the anchors, or the receivers, or the last two pieces of something dangerous. Or maybe they were sockets for the eyes of a god. And if that's the case, then what does it mean that they're still empty? Not far from this lonely mountain, another stone rests, untouched, equally impossible. It floats, or seems to, on a bed of its own mystery, because Japan doesn't bury all its secrets underground. Some it leaves hovering in plain sight. The Ishi-no-Hoden? It sits on a hill in Hyogo Prefecture, like a forgotten offering to something too old to name. The villagers call it Ishi-no-Hoden, Stone Treasure Hall, but that doesn't quite capture the wrongness of it. Imagine a boulder the size of a two-story house, perfectly cut into a rectangular block, suspended just inches above the ground as if it's floating. It isn't, but it looks like it should be. And for centuries, no one's dared move it, or explain it. The stone itself weighs over 500 tons, yet it rests on just a few barely visible points of contact with the earth. It doesn't sink. It doesn't shift. Even earthquakes leave it alone, as if it belongs to the tectonic plates more than the humans who live near it. The sides are polished smooth, unnatural in their precision, their angles too clean to be accidental. A small rectangular groove is carved into the top, deep and central, like a placeholder for something now missing, a sacred object, a mechanism, a body, a mind. There's no inscription, no record of who built it, when, or why. Local Shinto priests simply built a shrine beside it and called it sacred, which is another way of saying, no one understands it, so we worship it. Some theorize it was meant to be a cornerstone, a keystone for a monument that was never completed, but there are no companion stones. Others suggest it was a ceremonial platform, yet it's surrounded by silencino signs of ritual, no artifacts, just moss and unanswered questions. A few fringe theorists, of course, insist it's a landing pad for something not from here, not from now. And then there's the float, that uncanny illusion of levitation. Architects have studied the geometry and mechanics of its foundation. The conclusion? Yes, it touches the ground, technically, but just barely, as if whatever force shaped it also tried to defy gravity as a joke, or a dare, or a reminder. We could have lifted it, but chose not to. Every year, a few more people find their way to Ishi-no-Hoden. They touch it, take selfies, post videos. Then they leave, not understanding that it isn't a monument. It's a question in the shape of an answer, an object that refuses context, a relic of a story with no first chapter. Because every time someone tries to place it into history, history recoils. And just a few miles away, that history gets weirder, where sacred islands bury artifacts instead of bodies, and gods demand offerings that never decay. Because some mysteries aren't carved in stone, they're sealed in it. The Okinoshima Island rituals. Rising from the Sea of Genkai like a memory too sacred to name, Okinoshima is not just an island. It is a living altar, untouched by time, guarded by silence, and until recently, entirely forbidden. No women are allowed on Okinoshima. Never have been. Men must bathe naked in salt water before setting foot on its soil. Cameras are banned. Talking is discouraged. And whatever you bring to the island, you never take back. Not even a pebble. Not even a memory you're willing to share. What lies there? Artifacts over 80,000 of them. Many buried, many simply left in the open. Mirrors from China, glass beads from Persia, swords, rings, ceramics. Offerings made over centuries to appease the gods of the sea, particularly the deity Munakata Kami. But no temples, no tombs, no altars in the conventional sense. Just objects deliberately placed, obsessively arranged, left in a kind of ritual choreography no one today fully understands. The island, was a critical waypoint on ancient maritime trade routes between Japan and the Korean peninsula. Sailors stopped to pray for safe passage, but their prayers were tangible. They left behind treasures, not sacrifices, not trash, but gifts luxurious, rare, and inexplicably global, the kind of things a king might covet or a god might demand. The sheer variety and foreign origin of these offerings suggest Okinoshima was more than a spiritual site. It was a secret center of exchange, a spiritual customs office for souls and ships alike. But how did they choose what to leave? Why were some items buried, others exposed to the elements? And why did the rituals cease almost overnight? No one knows. The practice of offering faded. The island fell into ritual isolation. And now, it's protected by law, by monks, by myth. Even in 2017, when UNESCO designated it a World Heritage Site, they made a point to say, "Don't visit, don't try, you're not invited." Even today, people whisper of those who violated the rules, who took something, said something, remembered something they weren't supposed to. Bad luck followed, illness, death, as if the island itself keeps score. There's one shrine on Okinoshima Okitsugubut, even it seems designed to disappear into the landscape. No grandeur, just presence. As if the real shrine is the island itself. Some believe the rituals still continue unseen, undocumented, unbroken by time, that the island accepts offerings still, or demands them. And somewhere among those 80,000 relics, maybe there's one that doesn't belong to this world, one that whispers. But if you want whispers turned to screams, you'll have to look closer. Because the next mystery isn't buried, it stares at you through clay eyes, unblinking, from a civilization older than any known god. The Jomon Dogu figurines. They aren't statues, they aren't idols, and they definitely aren't toys. The Jomon Dogu figurines are clay figures left behind by Japan's prehistoric Jomon people hunter-gatherers who somehow mastered spiritual abstraction thousands of years before organized religion had rules. Dating back as far as 14,000 BCE, these eerie little humanoid sculptures have been unearthed across the Japanese archipelago, often buried in isolated pits or laid to rest in deliberate poses. They have wide hips, swollen bellies, and eyes like bulging goggles. Most unsettling of all, many appear to be intentionally broken. No one knows why. There are over 18,000 of these figurines cataloged to date. Each one is slightly different, yet unmistakably dogu. Some resemble pregnant women. Others look like armored beings with insectoid features. Some are missing limbs or heads but. Archaeologists argue these weren't damaged accidentally. They were ritually broken as part of ceremonies no one today remembers. A limb snapped off to heal a broken bone, a head shattered to cast out evil spirits, or something darker. The craftsmanship is deliberate, meticulous, etching, intricate geometric patterns, symmetrical forms. These weren't idle doodles or artistic experiments. They were tools, spiritual technologies, magical instruments for rituals long since erased. But what were they summoning? What were they repelling? The most famous among them, the Shakoki Dogu, has giant, round eyes that look like thermal goggles or spacefaring helmets. Fringe theorists, naturally, jump straight to ancient astronaut. Was it a depiction of a visitor from above, a deity descended in technology mistaken for divinity? Or were the Jomon trying to become something else, entirely transforming their identities through ritual into a form more protected, more sacred, more inhuman? Some scholars suggest dogu were fertility charms, used to protect mothers and children. But then, why do so many appear to be burned, buried, or broken? That's not how you treat a charm. That's how you trap something. And here's where it gets stranger. There's no evidence that the Jomon had a written language, no scriptures, no coded tablets. Just these clay figures, each one speaking in silence, like punctuation marks in a vanished sentence. Their language was gesture, form, symbolism that now escapes us. The dogu weren't mass-produced. Each one is unique, which means every one of them was an intimate creation, a physical prayer, or a warning. We dig them up and display them in museums. Bright lights, white shelves, sterile glass. But maybe they were never meant to be seen again. Maybe they were entombed for a reason. And what happens when you unbury something that was designed to be sealed? Not all ancient watchers come in human form. Some stare out from clay, and others are built to follow you home. Especially when the tomb they were meant to guard still hasn't been found. The keyhole-shaped kofun tombs. Scattered across the Japanese landscape like the fingerprints of forgotten giants, the kofun tombs are ancient burial, mounts massive, earthen structures, shaped like a keyhole when seen from above. Thousands of them. And yet, for all their size, presence, and precision, we still don't really know what's inside. Most date from the 3rd to the 7th century CE, a transitional blur between Japan's mythic past and its imperial rise. They were built for someone important, rulers, warlords, possibly even emperors, but their interiors remain largely unexcavated. Not because we can't, because we're not allowed. Especially the biggest one, the Daisen Kofun in Osaka, traditionally believed to be the resting place of Emperor Nintoku. It's over 480 meters long, longer than the Great Pyramid is tall, and surrounded by triple moats and a forest dense with ceremonial silence. But the Imperial Household Agency, which oversees royal graves, has declared it off-limits to archaeologists. Out of respect, they say, which is another way of saying, don't ask, don't look, don't touch. And that's where the mystery starts to rot. Why protect a pile of dirt for over 1,500 years? Why not allow researchers to confirm the contents, validate the traditions, clarify the timeline? Unless there's something inside they don't want confirmed or exposed. Conspiracy theories naturally spiral. Was Emperor Nintoku real? Was the tomb repurposed from an even older pre-imperial civilization? Could it be the resting place of someone or something not accounted for in the official story of Japan? The shape itself is unsettling. The round portion symbolizes heaven, the square, earth, a cosmic lock, and key motif. But keyholes are meant to open. These remain sealed. And many are aligned with uncanny precision to celestial events and rise at the solstice, lunar midpoints, stellar convergences. Was this just spiritual symbolism? Or were these mounds communicating with the sky? Or something in it? Grave goods have been recovered from some of the smaller, accessible kofun. Bronze mirrors, swords, armor, Haniwa clay figures guarding the perimeter. But the largest tombs are still untouched. Sealed not just by soil, but by decree. Some believe the imperial family fears what would be found inside foreign DNA, evidence of a non-divine lineage, contradictions that could unravel the mythology of the chrysanthemum throne. But if the throne is built on myth, maybe the truth lies beneath it. And while most cultures dig up their dead to understand their past, Japan leaves its secrets buried, locked, watching. Because maybe the dead aren't resting, maybe they're still ruling from below. And not far from one of these mounds, deep underground, is a tomb that's been opened just once. Inside, the walls speak in color, and no one agrees on what they're trying to say. Absolutely. Below are 3 mysteries, each at minimum 450 words, flowing seamlessly from one into the next, each ending with a strong hook into the next mystery, exactly as you requested. The Takamatsuzuka tomb murals. It was 1972 when construction workers digging near the sleepy village of Asuka accidentally opened a hole into history. Beneath layers of earth and time, they uncovered the Takamatsuzuka Tomba modest burial chamber, no larger than a single bedroom. But the moment they stepped inside, it became clear this wasn't a grave. It was a gallery. The walls were alive with color, frescoed in a style that seemed to defy everything we knew about ancient Japan. On one wall stood the Asuka beauties, a procession of women dressed in flowing garments, their skin pale, their eyes downcast, their presence almost spectral. Opposite them, male attendants. And above them, the cardinal directions represented as mythical beasts, the azure dragon of the east, the vermilion bird of the south, the white tiger of the west, and the black tortoise of the north. A Chinese cosmology in a Japanese tomb. Why? The mural's sophistication is undeniable. Delicate brushwork, complex composition, a command of pigment and perspective unseen in anything else from that period. Which has led to a growing and uncomfortable question. Who painted these, and for whom? Officially, the tomb is believed to date to the late 7th or early 8th century, during the Asuka period. Some suggest it was built for a Korean nobleman who held court in Japan. Others think it entombs a Japanese prince with Tang dynasty connections, but the body inside was never publicly identified. In fact, the chamber was resealed almost as quickly as it was opened, allegedly to preserve the artwork, but no one talks about what was found under the murals. And then there's the deterioration. Despite precautions, the murals have darkened over the years as if resisting light, as if the paintings want to return to shadow. Attempts to replicate the chamber failed to capture its mood, its presence, because the tomb doesn't just depict a journey to the afterlife. It feels like one. Like stepping into a threshold world where color is language and silence is law. Visitors aren't allowed in anymore, just scientists, carefully monitored, brief visits, no flash, no questions. And still, the question lingers. Why paint these figures in such haunting detail if no one was ever meant to see them? Or maybe they were meant to be seen by someone or something. Because buried not far from Takamatsuzuka is another artifact of the dead clay, expressionless, with a stare designed to outlast the centuries. The Kofun Haniwa figures. At first glance, they're charming, almost whimsical. The Haniwa cylindrical clay figures stand in ranks along the ridges of ancient Kofun burial mounds, their expressions frozen in childlike simplicity. Warriors, priests, dancers, horses, houses, a ceramic parade circling the dead. But spend a little more time with them, and something changes. The charm curdles, their blank stares start to feel less innocent and more deliberate, not merely decorative, not passive. Watching. Haniwa were placed not inside the tombs, but around them, marking the perimeter, guarding the boundary between the world of the living and whatever came next. They're believed to have originated around the 3rd century CE, replacing earlier wooden markers. And yet, as their numbers grew, so did their weirdness. Some are shockingly lifelike. Others are abstract, stylized almost to the point of absurdity. And some, unsettlingly, seem to blur the line between human and something else. Take the armored man Haniwa rigid posture, clenched fists, a helmet too smooth to be practical, or the laughing priest, whose mouth curls into a grin just wide enough to be threatening. Then there are the animal forms, wild-eyed horses with flared nostrils and twisted limbs. If these were simply markers, why the emotion? Why the animation? Why the scale? No two are alike, and some scholars believe they were modeled after real people retainers, family members, even enemies sacrificed and immortalized in clay. Others think they're spiritual guardians, like golems bound to the tomb by ritual. But if that's true, what exactly are they protecting, and from whom? Here's where it gets worse. In recent excavations, a few Haniwa were found buried face down intentionally. as if their watch had ended, or as if their presence had become unwelcome. Stories persist among local Haniwa moved without explanation, of figures found in different positions than where they were placed. A clay figure doesn't just shift, not on its own, but perhaps the creepiest theory is the simplest. Maybe they weren't made to protect the tomb. Maybe they were meant to keep something in. And what do you do when clay guards stop standing? Maybe you build a new kind of wall, a bigger one, a mountain even, or better yet, a cave. One carved into the very bones of the earth, where figures far older than Haniwa lie waiting in perfect stillness. The Asuka stone carvings. On the surface, the town of Asuka is quiet, serene, rice paddies, rolling hills, and elderly locals cycling through the mist. But beneath the pastoral calm lies something strange, dozens of mysterious stone carvings, scattered without order or explanation across the landscape. Massive granite shapes too geometric, too smooth, too intentional. Some are half buried, others hidden in forests. None have inscriptions. No one knows who made them. Take the Sakafune Ishi, a slab of granite nearly 6 meters long with deep channels carved across its surface like the top of a sacrificial table, or a blueprint for something mechanical. Water once flowed through these grooves, perhaps part of a purification rite, or something worse. Theories range from brewing vats to celestial maps to surgical platforms. Then there's the Kameshi Turtle Rock, a boulder shaped unnervingly like a turtle's head, complete with eyes, nostrils, and a leering mouth. Some locals believe it will crawl into town when the world ends. Others think it's watching, waiting for a sign. And the strangest of them all, the Oni no Manaita and Oni no Sechint, the demon's chopping board and demon's latrine. 2 smooth stones, one flat, one bowl-shaped, said to be the tools of an ancient demon who lived in the hills. Cute folklore, until you realize the carvings are over 1,000 years old, and the demon story only emerged recently, if trying to retrofit an explanation onto something that never asked for one. The tools used to shape these stones are unknown. The granite is incredibly hard, requiring advanced knowledge of masonry. There's no evidence of workshops, no quarries, no transportation methods, and many stones appear unfinished, or abandoned mid-processes if the project was halted suddenly, or interrupted. But the strangest part is this. The arrangement of the carvings loosely mirrors the star pattern of the Pleiades cluster. Coincidence? Maybe. But why align earthly granite with the heavens? And what were these shapes meant to channel or contain? Some say the stones hum at night. Others claim they shift positions ever so slightly, year by year, like hands on a cosmic clock. And if you follow their arrangement far enough, you'll find yourself staring at a sight even more bizarre. Not carved by hand, but by time, or water, or something with fingers older than both. Something that wanted to be seen. Something that doesn't belong under the ocean. The Yonaguni Monument revisited. Not all mysteries fade when submerged. Some sharpen, some evolve, and some, like the Yonaguni Monument, refuse to settle into myth, into science, into anything comfortable. Because the further you dive, the stranger it gets. We've already seen it once, those angular steps beneath the waves off Yonaguni Island, those colossal rock terraces too symmetrical to be accidental. But let's go deeper. Literally. Divers returning to Yonaguni have reported something that doesn't make it into the brochures. Sounds, rhythmic thuds, mechanical whines, low frequencies that don't seem natural. Equipment malfunctions. Compass needles that spin without cause. Even light behaves oddly, bending in unnatural ways in the cracks between the stone blocks. What kind of formation eats sunlight? Then there's the human reaction. Some divers report feeling watched. Not in the poetic sense, in the primal one. That sensation you get when a predator is just out of sight. A few have reported fleeting figure shadows moving across stone, vanishing the moment you turn your head. Hallucinations maybe, nitrogen narcosis, or maybe the structure isn't empty. Maybe it's inhabited by memory, by design, or by something else. Geologists, especially those not backed by universities with reputations to protect, have found tool-like markings in the crevices. Chisel strokes, cutting grooves. One section looks uncannily like a staircase, another like a stage. There's even what resembles a large basin, maybe a ritual pool. And all of it lies 26 meters below sea level, which would place its creation at a time when the sea was land, and the land held secrets no one thought to write down. Some have linked Yonaguni to the lost continent of Moa Pacific Atlantis, said to have sunk long before recorded history. It's a fringe theory, but fringe doesn't mean wrong. The Jomon people, who lived during the time Yonaguni might have been above water, were known for their intricate pottery, their abstract religious artifacts, their love of sacred geometry. Maybe they carved it. Maybe it was carved for them. Or maybe we're not dealing with a civilization at all. Maybe we're dealing with a message, one etched in the language of stone, one that only makes sense from above or below, one that doesn't want to be translated, only rediscovered. But what if this isn't the only one? What if another structure exists in land mirroring Yonaguni's scale, its intent, and its silence? Something hidden in plain sight, carved not by erosion, but by design. A stone too large to move, too precise to dismiss. A vessel. Or maybe a vault. The Kamegaoka burial mound. In the quiet plains of northern Honshu, far from the imperial capitals and courtly myths of Kyoto or Nara, sits a small hill that hums with unease. The Kamegaoka burial mound, located in Aomori Prefecture, is often overlooked in tourist guides. Too far, too plain. But it hides one of the strangest artifacts ever pulled from Japanese soil, the Shakoki Doguwa clay figurine with bulging goggle eyes, a wasp-like waist, and a posture that suggests not reverence, but readiness. Found in the 19th century and dated to the late Jomon period around 1000 BC, the Shakoki Dogu, goggle-eyed figure, is the Mona Lisa of Japan's prehistoric era, except no one can agree on what it's supposed to be. It's about 34 centimeters tall, with thick legs, stumpy arms, and eyes so large they take up half its face. The name comes from the resemblance to the snow goggles worn by the indigenous Ainu people, but these weren't made for fashion. The eyes are mechanical, insectoid, and disturbingly modern. Archaeologists guess it might be a fertility symbol. After all, its hips are wide, its belly slightly rounded. But that doesn't explain the armor-like plating etched into its chest, the antenna-like protrusions on its head, or the deliberate grooves that resemble circuitry. Not ancient motifs. Not animal forms. Something else. The rest of the Kamegaoka site only deepens the confusion. Burial goods found nearby include lacquered combs, jade beads, and fragments of pottery far more refined than expected from a primitive culture. There's evidence of trade, craftsmanship, even medical tools. It's almost as if the Jomon here weren't just surviving, they were remembering something, or trying to rebuild it. What's more unsettling is how many similar figures have been found across the region. Not identical, but close, like echoes of the same vision filtered through different minds, some with wide eyes, some with helmets, some appearing almost robotic. The deeper you dig, the less human they look. And then there's the way they were buried, not thrown away, not discarded, entombed, carefully, deliberately, as if laying to rest something sacred or something dangerous. Theories spiral, of course. Ancient astronauts, time travelers, beings from another world or another epoch of this one. Maybe the Dogu weren't just representations. Maybe they were replications. What if the Jomon weren't creating art? What if they were recording a memory? Or worse, making instructions? Because not far from Kamigaoka, hidden behind brush and bureaucracy, stands a mountain-sized tomb. One that doesn't just hold the dead, but might be protecting the living from what's inside. The disappearance of the Heike clan. Some disappearances are loud-marked by blood, betrayal, and burning cities. Others fade like a lantern, slowly drowning in a river. The Heike clan, once the most powerful family in Japan, did both. By the end of the 12th century, the Heike, also known as the Taira clan, were the ruling force of the nation. Their story reads like a tragic opera: meteoric rise, doomed arrogance, and a violent fall. But what makes their downfall a mystery isn't that they lost, it's that they vanished. The final act of the Heike's saga took place in 1185, during the Battle of Dan no Ura naval clash in the turbulent waters of the Shimonoseki Strait. The opposing Minamoto clan, hungry for control and divine justification, cornered the Heike fleet. Amid the chaos, the Heike matriarchs, samurai, and even the young Emperor Antokujust, 6 years old, plunged into the sea rather than be captured. According to legend, the boy emperor was cradled in his grandmother's arms when they sank beneath the waves. She told him, "In the depths of the ocean lies the capital of the sea god." And then, silence. Their bodies were never recovered. What followed wasn't just a political transition. It was a metaphysical absence. The Minamoto ruled, but the Heike lingered. In stories, in sightings, in echoes. To this day, local fishermen claim the waters of Dan no Ura are cursed. Ghostly ships are seen on foggy nights. Fish near the site are avoided. Some say they carry the souls of the drowned, bearing strange red markings like imperial seals. Crabs caught in the area have shell patterns eerily resembling human faces. They're called Haikegani Heike crabs. Some biologists say it's just natural selection, shaped by centuries of humans throwing back the crabs with the most unsettling carapaces. But others think it's something older. A punishment. A memory the sea refuses to digest. Shrines exist along the coast, built to appease the spirits of the clan. Priests still perform rituals to calm them. Yet every few years, there are strange reports. Sounds of drums from the water, whispers in archaic Japanese, flickering lights that circle fishing boats. Some say the Heike didn't die. They crossed over into another realm, beneath the sea. There's even a village legend, whispered and never written, that some members of the clan escaped, disguised, dispersed, blended into distant corners of Japan, carrying secrets too dangerous for history to remember. One of those rumored hiding spots? Deep in the southern forests, near a tomb with no name, guarded by a monolith that bleeds red in the rain. And beneath it, they say, lies something older than any clan, older than any emperor, something the Heike were trying to protect or contain. The mystery of Emperor Jimmu's tomb. Every empire needs a beginning, but Japan's might be the only one where the beginning looks straight back at you and says nothing. Emperor Jimmu, legendary first emperor of Japanese, said to have descended from the gods. Literally, a direct descendant of the sun goddess, Amaterasu, born to rule, ordained by heaven, and victorious in battle. His story is etched into the Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, ancient chronicles that blend mythology and monarchy into a seamless, unquestioned truth. But there's a problem. No one can prove he existed. And yet, his tomb exists. Officially, the Imperial Household Agency maintains a beautifully curated site in Kashihara, Nara Prefecture, keyhole-shaped Kofun mound surrounded by forest, flanked by white gravel and torii gates. Visitors bow, offer prayers, leave respectfully, but the closer you look, the more absurd it becomes. Because not only is there no physical evidence that Emperor Jimmu lived, there's no evidence that anyone is actually buried there. Historians are divided. Many suspect Jimmu is an entirely mythical constructa, divine placeholder, invented centuries later to give the imperial family a god-wrapped origin story. Others argue he may have been based on a real chieftain from the Yamato period, whose story grew in the telling until it sprouted celestial bloodlines and eagle-guided military campaigns. So, what is buried beneath that tomb? That's the mystery. Because the Japanese government has made it illegal to excavate or even properly study the site. The reason? Respect for the imperial ancestors. But scholars argue that this reverence feels suspiciously like fear. After all, if digging reveals nothing, no body, no grave goods, no trace of an emperor, then what happens to the mythology that underpins an entire dynasty? But if something is there, what could it be? There are whisper-soft underground chambers, hidden stone vaults, inscriptions never meant to be read. Unconfirmed reports from wartime intelligence agents claim the site was briefly surveyed by the Japanese military in the 1930s. What they found, if anything, was never disclosed. Some say there are tunnels beneath the mound. Others claim electromagnetic anomalies have been recorded around the site. Local folklore complicates things further. Some elders insist that the site once glowed faintly at dusk, that animals avoid the inner ring, that people who enter the forest at the wrong time emerge, confused, changed, or not at all, as if the mound is watching, or waiting. And maybe that's the real secret, that the first emperor was never meant to be found, because he never truly left. Or because something else was buried in his place, something so old, so unexplainable that the only way to contain it was to build a throne over it. A throne that still stands. But if the first emperor's tomb is a question pretending to be an answer, the next mystery is a weapon pretending to be a symbol. A sword no one's allowed to see because it may never have existed at all. The lost sword Kusanagi. In most monarchies, power is inherited. In Japan, it is symbolized by 3 sacred treasures: a mirror, a jewel, and a sword. Together, they form the imperial regalia of Japan, and among them, the sword is the most dangerous, the most mysterious, and some argue, most fictional. It's called Kusanagi no Tsurugi, the grass cutter sword, and it may be the only weapon in the world whose entire history exists in the negative space between myth and statecraft. Said to have been found in the belly of an 8-headed serpent by the storm god Susanoo, the sword was later presented to the sun goddess Amaterasu and eventually handed down to Emperor Jimmu, who may or may not have existed. From there, it becomes a hereditary phantom, passed from emperor to emperor, always hidden, never shown. Today, the sword is allegedly enshrined in the Atsuta Shrine in Nagoya, but the shrine priests don't display it. Visitors don't glimpse it. Even scholars aren't allowed within its inner sanctum. There are no photos, no modern descriptions, not even confirmation of the material it's made, from steel, bronze, meteorite. Nothing is certain. It is a national treasure no one can prove exists. In 1185, during the same battle of Dan no Ura that drowned the Heike clan, the sword was said to have been lost in the sea alongside Emperor Entoku. Some stories say it sank with him. Others claim a replica was taken in his place, and the true blade was spirited away beforehand. Either way, the sword has not been seen since. Just reappeared, quietly, spiritually. As if being real isn't the point. And yet, the regalia including Kusanagi still play a role in every imperial enthronement ceremony. A sacred box is presented, unopened. A sword that no one can look at is bowed to by world leaders. The performance persists, and in that performance, power is maintained. But what if the sword was real? What if it's not just an artifact of myth, but an object of true, anomalous power too dangerous to handle, too destabilizing to reveal. Some believe it's a relic of an ancient advanced civilization, like Yonaguni. Others, that it isn't a sword at all, but a device, some kind of extraterrestrial tool or weapon, mistaken for a blade. And then there are those who think it was never meant to be found in this world at all, that the gods didn't forge it, they sealed it. So maybe the reason no one sees Kusanagi isn't reverence, maybe it's fear. Because if the sword isn't in the box, the whole illusion collapses. And if it is, then what happens when someone finally opens it? Of course, not all imperial secrets are guarded with myths. Some are silenced with purge-swift, surgical, and still unexplained. Like the next mystery, where politics turned into paranoia and knowledge itself became a crime. The Ansei Purge. Between 1858 and 1860, something cold swept through the highest halls of Japanese power. Not a rebellion, not a war, but a silence. The kind that falls just before the blade. It was called the Ansei Purge, and on paper, it was political housekeeping, a crackdown on dissenters during a time of national crisis. In practice, it looked more like a surgical erasure of inconvenient minds, and to this day, no one fully understands who orchestrated it or why it happened so fast. The backdrop was chaos. Commodore Perry's black ships had forced Japan's hand in 1853, opening the once isolated country to Western influence and shattering centuries of controlled stagnation. Treaties were signed, ports were opened, pride was wounded, and inside the shogunate panic bloomed. Enter Naosuke, the Tokugawa shogunate's Tairur Grand Elder, a man known for his calm demeanor, his brutal efficiency, and his belief that Japan needed to modernize but on his terms. In 1858, he spearheaded the signing of the Harris Treaty with the United States, triggering outrage from imperial loyalists who saw the move as a betrayal. But rather than argue, responded with silence. And then, the disappearances began. Over 100 officials, scholars, samurai, and imperial loyalists were arrested, exiled, or executed in a matter of months. Some vanished in the night. Others were made public examples. A few simply retired and were never heard from again. Among them were members of the Mito domain, the faction most critical of the shogunate's submission to the West. The purge wasn't random. It was targeted intellectuals, visionaries, reformers, people asking questions Japan wasn't ready to answer, not just about treaties, about power, about origins. Some were scholars studying forbidden foreign texts. Others had connections to archaeological digs in Kyoto and Nara excavations that were abruptly shut down in the same year. Coincidence? No charges were ever made public. No official list was kept. Those who survived refused to speak of it. And then, in 1860, just as suddenly as it began, the purge ended when Naosuke himself was assassinated at the gates of Edo Castle, his body left in the snow like punctuation. A warning, or a revenge. The Tokugawa regime collapsed a decade later. The Meiji Restoration rewrote the nation. But the purge left scars, gaps in historical records, families erased from memory, projects that were never resumed. Whatever secrets those victims held, they took them underground. Literally in some cases. Because one of the men silenced during the purge had been investigating a mound outside Kyoto. A minor tomb. Unremarkable. Until he found the inscription written in a language no one could read. Not then. Not now. And the stone? It's still there, still humming, still untranslated. The Inariyama sword inscription. It was unearthed in 1968, during what was supposed to be a routine excavation of an old burial mound in Gyoda, Saitama Prefecture. Just another slice of Japan's layered soil, where the past is usually measured in broken pots and rusted nails. But what they found instead was a sword, ancient, elegant, and impossibly loud. The Inariyama sword dates back to the 5th century CE. It's made of iron, nearly 74 centimeters long, still sharp in places despite 15 centuries underground. But the weapon itself isn't the mystery. It's what was etched into Itan inscription in gold inlay, running the length of the blade, hidden from sight for over 1,500 years. The text is written in Chinese characters, but in a style and syntax no one expected. It took years to decode, and even now, its meaning remains murky. The translation? Something like, "This sword was made by a man of the Wakatake clan. It belongs to King Wakatakeru, who subdued the East." It's a name that doesn't officially exist. Wakatakeru isn't in any imperial lineage. Not in the Nihon Shoki. Not in the Kojiki. But historians now believe it refers to Emperor Yoryakuwa, shadowy ruler, whose reign sits just on the edge of recorded history. If true, this would make the Inariyama sword the oldest known artifact directly linking an emperor to a physical object. Except, the timeline doesn't line up. The sword predates the earliest known official regalia. The inscription style appears older than the writing systems Japan supposedly adopted from China. And some of the characters' bizarre, looping, geometric don't conform to any known script. A few appear only once, on this blade, and nowhere else in the annals of Japanese archaeology. There's also the location. Saitama wasn't thought to be a political center in the 5th century. So what was a royal sword doing in a minor province? And why was it buried? Was it stolen, hidden, offered? And who exactly was it written for? Some believe the sword is proof of a splinter lineage in emperor erased from official memory. Others think it's a forged timeline planted centuries later to rewrite history with steel. But there are darker whispers still that the inscription isn't a dedication. It's a binding, a spiritual tether meant to lock something into place. The blade as seal, the writing as ward. Because gold doesn't tarnish, but truth does. And there's one more thing. Archaeologists who examined the blade up close reported a strange tingling sensation. Heat without fire, pressure without contact. One even fainted. The sword now sits behind glass in a museum. Silent, motionless. But if you stare too long at the inscription, some claim it shifts. Not the characters, but the space between them. Like something's reading you. And in a forgotten temple just beyond that region, there's another artifact covered in strange script. But this one was never meant to be read. It was meant to be sealed. The sealed scrolls of Mount Koya. High in the fog-choked peaks of Mount Koya, where the cedars lean like eavesdropping monks and the air carries the weight of 1,000 sutras, there is a temple that houses something no one is allowed to open. Not a coffin, not a vault, a scroll, or several. Their number is unclear. Their contents? Entirely forbidden. The temples of Koyasan are known for their esoteric Shingon Buddhism, founded by the monk Kukai in the 9th century. It's a faith built on secrecy, ritual precision, and coded cosmologies. Mandalas that fold space, chants that manipulate sound, diagrams of the universe as seen from the inside out. But even within that labyrinth of metaphysics, there is something deeper layer of doctrine so hidden, it was never taught aloud. That's where the sealed scrolls come in. They are kept in a temple vault known only to a few abbots, handed down across generations with no key, no unlocking ceremony, no plan for revelation. They are said to contain Kukai's final teachings, those he received not from this world, but from a higher realm during his legendary meditative retreat when he claimed to have spoken with the Dainichi Nyorai, the cosmic Buddha. Most monks won't speak of the scrolls at all. Those who do mention them only in passing, with bowed heads and evasive eyes. The term used is Himitsu no Kotoba, the secret words. Words, it's said, that do not describe reality, but control it. Some believe the scrolls contain mantras too powerful to utter sounds that could unmake illusions or reality itself. Others think they contain predictions, visions of Japan's future so devastating that even speaking them could shape events. A few fringe theorists suggest they hold non-human knowledge, mathematical formulae, star maps, or even coordinates. But to where? There have been attempts to access them, quiet ones. In 1923, a fire destroyed part of the surrounding monastery, but not the vault. In 1951, an academic from Kyoto tried to bribe his way into the inner sanctum. He vanished 2 months later. His body was never found. Just his notebook, filled with sketches of symbols he claimed to have glimpsed in a dream after visiting the temple. Some of those symbols match those found on the Inariyama sword. Others match nothing. Then, in 1984, during a restoration project, a monk reportedly opened a smaller, auxiliary scroll thought to be a duplicate. He died within the week. Heart failure. His final words, scrawled on his prayer mat, were, "It speaks in silence." And so the scrolls remain sealed, watched, whispered about, guarded, not for their fragility but for ours. Because if words can shape the world, then somewhere in those scrolls might be a sentence no one should read. A command, a truth, a name. And far from Mount Koya, in a different shrine, another ancient object is said to hum when spoken to as if it remembers those words. A mirror that doesn't reflect light, but memory. The ancient mirrors of Himiko. In a country where the past is curated with surgical precision, some things still refuse to behave. Chief among them, the 8-sided bronze mirrors linked to Queen Himiko, a ruler so shrouded in smoke, she might as well be made of it. According to Chinese chronicles, Himiko ruled the land of Yamatai in the 3rd century CE. She was a shaman queen, unmarried, secluded, commanding legions through spells and diplomacy. When she died, her people built a massive tomb and sacrificed 100 slaves to accompany her into the next world. Classic. But here's where things get slippery. Japan's own historical texts barely mention her at all. It's as if someone later on decided she didn't quite fit the story. So, we're left with artifacts. Or, more precisely, with mirrors. Over 100 bronze mirrors, some intricately decorated with Chinese cosmological pattern, have been unearthed across Japan, and many scholars believe they were part of a diplomatic gift from the Chinese Wei dynasty to Himiko. The most famous among them is the Sankakubuchi Shinjukyo, an ornate, 8-lobed mirror inscribed with strange glyphs and celestial imagery, the kind of object that doesn't just reflect, it distorts. It remembers. The trouble is, no one can prove any of the mirrors actually belonged to Himiko. Her supposed tomb remains unidentified. The mirrors are scattered. Some are dated earlier than she lived, others later. A few appear to have been deliberately broken and buried, ritually silenced. One was found inside a tomb that contained no body, just the mirror, lying face down. And then there's the mirror found in Nara in the 1990s, buried in an undisturbed grave. When cleaned, its surface revealed a series of micro-etching symbols not visible to the naked eye, not documented in any known system, tiny, fractal, repeating. A few scientists claimed they were chaotic patterns that mimic brainwaves. Others said they were meaningless. But even among skeptics, a question lingered. Why carve what can't be seen? In Shinto tradition, mirrors are sacred not because they reflect, but because they show the truth. They are portals, tools, sometimes weapons. The Yara no Kagami, another mirror, is one of the 3 imperial regalia of Japan alongside the Kusanagi sword and the Yasakani jewel. And like those, it is never shown to the public. Are these just religious symbols? Or devices? Are they meant to show something? Or keep something hidden? One mirror, displayed briefly before being locked away again, was said to cause headaches and nausea in those who looked too long. Another, now in museum storage, emits electromagnetic interference. And there's a whisper, a rumor, that one mirror still sealed in its box shows the reflection of someone who isn't in the room. But maybe the queen didn't need armies. Maybe her mirrors were enough. And not far from the burial mounds that once may have housed her, lies a different kind of message carved, not in bronze or ink, but in stone. Immovable, undeciphered, watching. The Masuda no Iwafune revisited. At first glance, it looks like a mistake. A megalith halfway through becoming something else, like someone tried to build a temple, then quit mid-thought. But the Masuda no Iwafune, or rock ship of Masuda, doesn't suffer from indecision. It radiates precision, confidence, and worst of all, deliberate silence. Perched on a hill in Asuka, carved from the mountain itself, this 800-ton stone is unlike anything else in Japan, or anywhere for that matter. Rectangular, flat-topped, grooved. With 2 square holes cut cleanly into its surface, they're symmetrical, they're centered, and they go nowhere. The entire thing screams design. But design for what? No tools were left behind, no inscriptions, no surrounding ruins. It wasn't part of a building. It is the building, or the message, or the warning. Some call it a tomb, others an astronomical observatory. But the alignments are off. It doesn't face true north. It doesn't point at solstice lines. And it wasn't shaped by nature. Geologists agree on that much. The stone's angles are too sharp, the planes too flat. Even the material, the hard granite-like igneous rock, makes carving this shape with ancient tools nearly impossible. But there it is, finished, or maybe abandoned just before the final step. Then come the deeper theories. That it was a prototype for something bigger. That it's a reverse mold, meant to shape something out of molten metal or lost technology. That the holes on top were docking points for poles, or symbols, or something vertical that once pierced the sky. A few have even suggested it's a part of an ancient machine buried dormant, waiting for activation. But activation by what? Some locals say on certain nights, the air above the stone vibrates. Not audibly, physically. You feel it in your teeth, as if the stone is resonating with something below or something above. Birds won't land on it. Grass dies if it gets too close. It isn't cursed, it's just tuned to the wrong frequency. Or maybe the right one. There are legends, quiet ones, told by old men with fewer and fewer teeth each year, that the rock wasn't carved at all. It was exposed, like something underground reached the surface and broke off. That the rest of it is still down there, alive, listening. No shrine has claimed it, no Buddhist sect, no Shinto temple. It is untouched by ritual too strange to own, too old to translate. Even the name rock ship feels like a dodge, a euphemism. Like everyone knows it's not a ship, but calling it that feels safer. And if the rock is a message, it's written in the dialect of geometry and fear. But what if it wasn't the only one? Because just across the region lies another mystery buried, not in rock, but in ritual. On an island no one is allowed to live on. One that doesn't hide the past, but feeds on it. Okinoshima, the island that eats offerings. Okinoshima doesn't care if you believe in gods. It isn't waiting for you. It's not even hiding. It's just the rising out of the sea of Genkai, like a sealed door, ancient and immune to explanation. And even from the mainland, you can feel it watching. No women are allowed on Okinoshima. Never have been. The reason? Officials cite ritual purity. Locals whisper other things, that women bleed, that they carry spirits, that they draw attention. Men who wish to land must first strip and perform a naked ritual bath in the sea. It's not optional. It's not metaphor. You cleanse yourself before setting foot on the island, because what lives there, if it lives, does not appreciate visitors. You can go, but you can never take anything back. Not a rock, not a leaf, not even a memory you're willing to speak out loud. And yet, the island is full of offerings. Over 80,000 artifacts have been discovered, theragifts to the kami, the spirits believed to inhabit the place. Bronze mirrors, swords, rings, glass beads from Persia, gold objects traced back to Korean kingdoms. Nothing is labeled. Nothing is arranged in displays. These treasures were never meant to be seen. They were meant to be left, forgotten, consumed. Some were buried, some scattered on the surface like breadcrumbs for dead gods. Many are now in storage at Munakata Taisha, the main shrine that administers the island. But even the priests admit they have no idea what it's for. They just know the rituals must continue. The island has no residents, no permanent shrine buildings, only stones, arranged in ways that suggest an older intelligentsia language in placement, in silence. Some suspect Okinoshima was once a Pan-Asian spiritual hub, a place where priests from Japan, Korea, and China performed rites together or against each other. There are no written records. In 2017, Okinoshima was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But unlike every other site on the list, it is completely closed to the public. You can't tour it. You can't study it. You can't even look too long at photos. The only thing the government will say is that it's a place of continued ritual practice. And people who violate the rules, who sneak there, steal something, talk too much, are said to suffer sudden illness, madness, strange accidents. One man allegedly brought back a pebble for his daughter. She died in her sleep a week later. He returned the stone anonymously with a note. I believe now. Maybe the offerings were never gifts. Maybe they were bribes. Or maybe they were seals. And if that's true, then we have a much bigger problem, because one of the offerings was recently identified as a piece of a mirror. One thought lost. One known to be tied to a queen who ruled with silence and shadow. And the last time that mirror was whole, someone saw something they weren't meant to. The broken mirror of Himiko. It wasn't supposed to be found. Not whole, not now, not again. But in 2014, during a minor excavation near Saga Prefecture, archaeologists uncovered a fragment of a bronze mirror. Standard procedure. Japan is littered with them ceremonial pieces, trade objects, regalia imitations. They cataloged it, cleaned it, took the usual photos. Then someone matched the patternite petal rosettes surrounded by coiling dragonstone, a long-lost artifact believed to have belonged to Queen Himiko of Yamatai. Which would have been interesting enough if the pattern hadn't already been cataloged among the offerings on Okinoshima. Same mirror. Two pieces. Two places no one expected to connect. The mirror in question belongs to a class known as Sankakubuchi Shinjukyo large, elaborate, 8-sided bronze mirrors from the 3rd century, often linked to Chinese diplomatic gifts. But this one was different. Beneath the oxidation, forensic scans revealed micro-etching symbols that don't match Chinese, Japanese, or any known script. Glyphs that seem to swirl under magnification, like they're moving when you're not looking. Some claim the pattern isn't text at all, but a map, not of land, not of stars, but something between. The mirror had been deliberately shattered, not damaged by age. Experts believe it was ritually broken, its power divided, its reflection sealed. One half went to the sea, the other inland, as if to keep something from returning to its source. Himiko's connection to mirrors isn't accidental. According to Chinese records, she communicated through mediums, lived in isolation, and was revered as a shaman queen. Her reign wasn't built on armies. It was built on fear, the kind of control that only works if you know something no one else does. The Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, Japan's earliest texts, erase her almost completely. which is strange because the Chinese Weiji describes her in detail. How do you lose a ruler described as the living bridge between worlds? Unless that's the point. Unless she wasn't lost. She was buried on purpose. Some believe her mirror wasn't a symbol of power, it was a key. A way to open a gateway, or to trap what had already come through. The mirror reflects, but not just light. It holds memory, shape, echo. When the saga fragment was briefly displayed in a regional museum, multiple visitors reported nausea, migraines, even brief auditory hallucinations, voices that sounded like chanting, but in no language they knew. The fragment is now back in storage, unlisted, forgotten officially. But what happens when someone finds the third piece? Because rumors swirl of another fragment, unearthed decades ago and quietly sold to a private collector, one who never spoke again. And if Himiko's mirror really was broken into 3, then the next mystery is simple. Who broke it? And what did they see in it before it shattered? The whispering bamboo of Arashiyama. There's a sound that follows you through the Arashiyama bamboo grove in Kyoto, not footsteps, not wind. A soft rustling, rhythmic, and almost too regular, like breathing. Locals call it the whisper. Tourists think it's just wind in the stalks. But monks from nearby Tenryuji Temple have a different name for it. Kodama no Sasayakete, murmurs of the spirits. The grove is beautiful, hauntingly so. Tall bamboo columns rise like green cathedral pillars, and the light filters down in vertical veins. It feels timeless, designed. Like something's watching you through the bars. But what unnerves visitors most isn't what they see. It's what they hear, a whisper that seems to follow, shift sides, even answer questions you haven't asked yet. There are ancient stories older than temples, older than Kyoto, about spirits called Kodama, said to live inside trees. Not all trees, just certain ones, and they don't like being disturbed. In Arashiyama, the bamboo itself behaves oddly. Botanists have noted stalks that lean against gravity, twisting unnaturally. Entire patches grow in spirals. One section of the grove remains perfectly still during windstorms, while another dances under calm skies. In 2008, a visitor captured a video of the bamboo vibrating, not swaying, but trembling, despite no wind and no visible disturbance. The footage was quietly taken down months later. The original uploader never responded to follow-ups. And then there's the echo. Clap your hands in Arashiyama and the sound doesn't return normally. It breaks, fractures, splits into strange patterns, like something's catching it, holding it, whispering it back with a delay. Some researchers once tried to measure the acoustics of the grove using a directional microphone. They reported resonant anomalies, frequencies bouncing in ways inconsistent with the layout, as if the forest was answering in its own geometry. One microphone picked up a deep pulse at regular intervals. When sped up, it resembled speech patterns. The researchers labeled it environmental interference and left the project incomplete. A local priest claims there's a path that sometimes appears near Duskinley for a moment where the bamboo parts slightly and the sound of whispering stops entirely. Dead silence. He followed it once. Says he emerged on the other side of the grove 3 hours later with no memory of the walk. And that's the real fear here. Not that the bamboo is haunted, but that it's sentient. That Arashiyama is not just a grove, but a network, something alive, listening, storing every whisper, every breath, every step. Not a forest, a mind. And deep within it, they say, there's one stalk that isn't bamboo at all. It's hollow, cold, metallic. And if you press your ear to it, you don't hear whispers. You hear chanting in a voice that hasn't been human for centuries. The hollow stalk. It looks like all the others, green, ribbed, swaying gently in the breeze. But it isn't bamboo. It just pretends to be. Deep in the Arashiyama grove, Past the tourist trails and into the parts where moss swallows your footsteps, there's a stalk locals avoid. Children are told not to touch it. Old women mutter and veer away. No signs mark it, no fences guard it. It guards itself. They call it Karadakati hollow stalk. No matter the season, no leaves grow from it. It doesn't flower. It doesn't age. Botanists who examined it once noted that its surface temperature was consistently cold, even on the hottest days. One tried to take a core sample. His drill bit shattered. Another brought electromagnetic sensors. They shorted out one by one as he approached. He left without speaking and never returned to the grove again. From a distance, it hums. Up close, if you lean your ear against its surface, the hum becomes something else. A chant, not in Japanese, not even in anything recognizable. Repetitive, deep, echoing with metallic reverb, as if coming from far underground. Some say it's just whined through the grove, but wind doesn't follow a rhythm. Wind doesn't repeat syllables. Wind doesn't speak. A shrine once stood nearby, long gone now. Burned in the Edo period, they say, after a monk claimed the stalk was a tether to the under-earth. His notes, preserved in a temple archive, describe the stalk in unsettling detail. How it grew overnight, how birds refused to perch near it, how stones placed around it disappeared without a trace. He wrote of dreams, of endless corridors, of a mirror that showed him not himself, but someone else staring back. That was the last entry. The stalk is always the same height. It casts no shadow at noon, and if you circle it 3 times clockwise, local legend says you will forget a name, not your name, someone else's. A name you needed to remember. A name that mattered, gone. Hollow objects have a purpose. A flute, a tunnel, a throat. The hollow stalk doesn't just echo sound, it may collect it. Some believe it's an antenna. Others think it's a conduit, something that transmits data, or prayers, or souls. But where does it send them? The most unsettling theory? That the stalk isn't alone, that there are others, buried, dormant, disguised across Japan. Ancient nodes in a network of forgotten architecture not made by gods, but something older, something that left before we learned to lie to ourselves with language. And if one stalk hums, another must eventually respond. And when it does, they say it won't be with words. It'll be with a song. One you already know but don't remember learning. One you heard before you were born. In a place where bamboo doesn't grow, and mirrors don't reflect, and the earth hums back when you scream. The crying trees of Yakushima. In the deep, rain-lashed forests of Yakushima Island, where moss drowns the roots and the clouds never leave the canopy, the trees do something no one can explain. They cry. Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. The great Yakusugi satyrs, thousands of years old, exude a sap that drips in steady, rhythmic droplets. Not from wounds, not from cuts, from the bark itself, as if the trees are sweating under pressure, as if they know something's coming. Yakushima is no ordinary forest. It rains over 300 days a year, making it one of the wettest places in Japan. But even in that constant dampness, these trees emit a thick, resinous fluid that defies chemistry. Researchers have tried to classify it part oil, part pheromone, part something unidentifiable. It glows faintly under UV light. It doesn't rot. It doesn't dry. It doesn't stop. Hikers call it ghost pitch. The locals call it namidadiers. And when the trees cry, the forest goes quiet. Birds stop singing. Insects vanish. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. No one's sure how old the Yakusugi are. Some estimates put them at 7,000 years. That means they've been here since before Japan had emperors, before writing, before the concept of Japan even existed. And they've seen everything. Fires, floods, civilizations rising and crumbling. And still they stand, weeping. A few trees have names. Jomonsugi, the most famous, is guarded like a shrine. No one's allowed to touch it anymore, not because of preservation, because too many people reported strange dreams after brushing its bark. Dreams of endless roots, of buried mouths, of stone doors under the soil. And then there's Wilson's stump, a massive hollow trunk, big enough to stand inside. Tourists take selfies there. But some claim that if you stand alone in the hollow and close your eyes, you'll hear voices above you, whispering in a dialect older than Japanese. Some say it's wind, others say it's warning. In 1997, a scientist from Tokyo University camped alone near one of the weeping trees for a soil study. His journal entries became increasingly erratic, describing sensations of being watched, of breathing bark, of dreams where the forest moved around him during the night. He was found the next morning at the trailhead. Shoes on the wrong feet, mud in his ears, unable to speak for days. He later described it as stepping into something else's memory. And maybe that's what Yakushima really is. Not a forest, a record. Because the crying doesn't just signal pain, it signals retention of names, of footsteps, of voices. The trees remember everything, including things humans never witnessed. And deep in the island's interior, where no trails lead, there's a tree that doesn't cry, doesn't weep, doesn't bend. It's perfectly straight, perfectly still. And they say, if you knock on it 3 times, it knocks back. The tree that knocks back. It's not marked on any map of Yakushima, not on tourist brochures, not on the ranger's logs, not even on satellite images, because the canopy there folds over itself like a secret. But if you ask the right guide, or the wrong old man at the right bar, they might tell you about it, the tree that knocks back. It's deep inland, past the designated trails, past the rope fences, past where the air stops smelling like cedar and starts smelling like wet stone and cold iron. The tree stands alone in a clearing that doesn't seem to belong. Too open, too quiet. The moss there doesn't grow right. The birds won't cross it, and the wind dies as you approach. From a distance, it looks like just another ancient Yakusugi Strait, massive, gray with time, but up close, the bark is too smooth. Not natural smooth, machined. There are no knots, no scars, just vertical grooves, evenly spaced, running top to bottom. It's not the tallest tree in the forest, or the oldest, or even the widest. It's just wrong. The legend goes like this. If you knock on it 3 times, exactly knocks back. Not echo, not branch movement. An actual response from within the trunk. A deep, hollow thump, followed by silence. Then you dream. Everyone dreams differently, but always of the same place. A corridor of roots pulsing slightly, like arteries. A mirror at the end, fogged with breath. And a figure silent, watching, faceless. Not threatening, just waiting. Most people wake up sweating. Some cry. A few forget the trip entirely. The locals used to believe the tree was a Tsukumogamiya spirit, awakened in an object over 100 years old. But this tree predates humans, and no one claims it anymore. Not the temples, not the Shinto priests, not even the government. It is officially unrecognized. In 1986, a forestry student tried to core the tree for aging analysis. His instrument broke. He tried again. It shattered. His notes mention hearing 3 knocks from inside the trunk later that night while camping nearby. He never submitted the final report. The tree has no scent. No insects live on it. No fungi grow near it. And every few years, A new set of boot prints is found leading to the clearing, but none coming back out. So we call it a tree, because calling it what it really is would require knowing something we don't want to know. And yet, if you listen closely, if the forest is dead quiet, and if you've brought nothing with you but questions, it might just answer, but beware the third knock. Because when it comes, it's not always from the tree. Sometimes it's from underneath it. The floating island of Lake Biwa. Lake Biwa is Japan's largest freshwater lake. It is ancient millions of years, old and central to myth, commerce, and silence. Cities grew around it. Empires crossed it. Gods, supposedly, drank from it. But at the center of all this stillness, there's something that refuses to stay still. An island that moves. Locals call it Ukishimate, floating island. It's not on every map, and even when it is, the coordinates shift over time. Not by inches, by miles. Fishermen report seeing it in one place in the morning and another in the afternoon. Some claim it disappears entirely for weeks, only to re-emerge unchanged in the opposite end of the lake. It's small, barely large enough for a tree or two. But it's there, until it isn't. And no one can agree on what it's made of. Some say it's a tangle of reeds and roots. Others swear it's solid earth. One elderly priest, half-blind and mostly deaf, described it as not land, not water, something in between. When asked what he meant, he laughed and said, "A lie the lake tells." Geologists dismiss it. They call it flotsam, vegetation mats, lake illusions. They write it off in papers, footnote it into non-existence. But the people who live around Lake Biwa don't joke about it. They leave offerings when it appears. They don't try to land on it. One man did. In 1973, he rowed out after spotting it through binoculars. His boat was found adrift 2 days later. No body. Just a circle of water where the island had been. Flat, undisturbed. There are photographs, yes. Blurry, inconsistent, contradictory. In some, the island casts a shadow. In others, it doesn't. In one, dated 1961, a woman can be seen standing on it. A tourist, allegedly. Her name lost. Her fate, unknown. The photo now hangs in a bar on the lake's southern edge, framed, cracked, deliberately crooked. Some believe Ukishima is not an island, but a mirror. Not a reflection of the sky, but of something else. A parallel landscape briefly visible, barely tangible. A landscape that is watching back. The idea is not new. Ancient poetry from the Heian era references a wandering isle that delivers messages to the emperor in dreams. One verse reads, "It floats not with waves, but with time. The isle that breathes, whose soil is shadow." And just one seen 2004, radar scans showed a depth anomaly beneath the location where the island was last seen. A trench, circular, as if something rises from beneath the lake and withdraws again, pulling the island with it. A platform? A seal? Or just a mouth waiting to open again? Whatever it is, one thing is clear. Ukishima doesn't drift. It chooses. And next time, it might choose you. Especially if you're already dreaming of lakes. Lakes. And the eyes beneath them. The eyes beneath the lake. They only appear at night. Locals around Lake Biwa whisper about them the Mizume no Me, the eyes of the water woman. Sometimes it's plural, sometimes singular. Sometimes it's a myth, sometimes a warning. But always, it's watching. Fishermen have seen them first. Faint, bioluminescent orbs beneath the surface, perfectly round, always two, always aligned, hovering just below the boat, unmoving, unblinking. Eyes where no creature should be. Eyes too far apart to belong to any known fish. Too large to be human. too symmetrical to be random. They're not constant. They don't follow tides or moon phases. They just show up. Under boats, near the shore, beneath piers. They blink unseen, vanish. But if you see them, you dream. And that's where the real problem begins. Those who've seen the eyes report almost identical dreams. You're underwater, but you're not drowning. You're kneeling on a lakebed of pale stone, surrounded by darkness, with an impossibly massive shape in front of you, something draped in fabric that flows like water but isn't wet. You look up and see the eyes again, but this time, they're open. Some say it's a yokaya mizume, or water woman, once sacrificed to the lake and now restless. Others think it's a guardian, keeping something below from coming up. A few say it's not a being at all, but the lake itself becoming self-aware. A consciousness with no mouth, only perception. In 1979, a diver exploring an old torii gate submerged on the lake's northern side reported a sensation of being pulled downward, not physically, but mentally. His camera jammed. His depth gauge spun. When he resurfaced, he was bleeding from the ears. He couldn't explain why. He died 2 months later in his sleep. His last words, according to his wife, "It saw me." There's an unofficial record from the 1930s of a monk who camped at the lake's edge to meditate. He spent 7 days in silence. On the 8th, he carved a symbol into a wooden tablet and threw it into the water. He left without speaking to anyone. The symbol? It matches one found on a fragment of Himiko's mirror. Which brings us to the oldest story, that Lake Biwa was not made by water but by falling light, that a thing came down and the land collapsed around it, sealing it inside. The water wasn't to sustain life. It was to trap it. And what we call eyes, just cracks in the surface of something trying to wake up. Because lakes aren't meant to stare back. And if they do, you'd better pray the next ripple on the surface isn't a hand reaching up still dreaming, still blind, but not for much longer. And if that hand breaks through, don't run. Because it's not reaching for air. It's reaching for the mirror you carry in your face. The mirror you carry in your face. It's in every photo, every reflection, every glance at still water. That thing you assume is you. But in ancient Japan, a mirror wasn't just a surface. It was a threshold, a trap, a test. And sometimes, it lied. Shinto shrines have always revered mirrors as sacred objects, not to admire oneself, but to confront the self behind the self, the one you don't talk to, the one that doesn't blink when you do. The kami, or spirit, housed within. The yata no kagami one, of the 3 imperial regalia said to embody truth, but no one has seen it in centuries. The priests say it's hidden away, too holy for eyes. Others say it cracked long ago, and what was inside started to leak. In the old days, people covered mirrors during thunderstorms and death rituals. Not out of superstition, out of survival. Because mirrors weren't passive, they were doors. And when energy shifts during death, during lightning they might open, just for a second, long enough for something to notice. There are regional legends never written down, just passed through grave whispers about mirrors that forget to reflect. You look in, your face doesn't look back. Or worse, it does, but moves slightly slower, or faster, or stops entirely, while you keep breathing. These are called yokusho kyo, mirrors of invocation. One story tells of a noblewoman who received a hand mirror as a wedding gift. She gazed into it often, too often. One day, she looked and saw herself sleeping, smiling. The next morning, she wouldn't speak, only mimic. They said she became a vessel not possessed, but replaced. Her husband buried the mirror in a river, bound in cloth and salt. That river no longer exists, dried up, as if something beneath it got up and walked away. In Kyoto, during a temple renovation in 1922, Workers found a mirror sealed behind a false wall. It was wrapped in red cloth and etched with warnings in Kanbun classical Chinese. One phrase repeated 3 times. Do not show it the moon. It's now kept in a museum basement. The plaque says replica. But sometimes, during the full moon, the glass fogs from the inside. Modern mirror legends persist. In some convenience stores, security cameras have glitched, briefly showing reflections of people who weren't present. In one case, a man was seen smiling in the mirror before he entered the store. And maybe that's the truth. Mirrors don't reflect us. They remember us. They hold versions we've abandoned, or haven't become yet, or shouldn't ever be. And when the eyes beneath the lake rise, when the tree knocks back, when the bamboo whispers your forgotten name, the mirror will be waiting. Not to show you something new, but to return something old. And if you lean in close enough, you might see it. Not your face, but the thing that's been watching through it all along. The faceless ghosts of Naparabo. They look like people. That's the trick, the cruel one. The Naparabo, or faceless ghosts, are a staple of Japanese folklore, pale figures that appear on empty roads, near rivers, in alleyways just after twilight. At first glance, they seem ordinary. A traveler, a monk, a woman in a kimono. But when you get close, when they look up, there's nothing there. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just smooth, skin-like void. And then they smile. Of course they do. Even without a mouth, the intention radiates. That chill you feel? That's your body remembering something your brain isn't ready for. The first stories go back centuries. One of the oldest comes from the 12th century, about a man who visited a tea house on his way to Kyoto. The server was polite, quiet. When he complimented her on her stillness, she looked up and her face was gone. He fled, reached the next village. A farmer calmed him, offered a seat, asked what had frightened him, and then slowly turned to face him. Faceless. These stories all end the same way. No attacks, no violence, just recognition, followed by disintegration. The mind tears itself apart, not from fear, but from incomprehension. From the realization that what you're seeing should not be possible and yet is. Modern sightings still occur. In 1989, a security guard patrolling a corporate complex in Saitama reported seeing a woman crying near a vending machine. He approached, asked if she needed help. She looked up. No features. He collapsed, quit 2 days later, wouldn't speak, only drew circles. In 2003, a driver on the outskirts of Tokyo struck a pedestrian. Mild impact, no blood. He stopped the car. The figure stood, turned, no face. When police arrived, there was no body, no dent, no evidence the car had hit anything. Skeptics write these off as hallucinations, sleep paralysis, urban legend, bleed through. But why do so many reports match? Why the repetition of the same detail, a figure that appears only when you're alone, always quiet, always just waiting to be noticed? Some believe the Naparabo aren't ghosts at all, that they're masks, vessels, that something uses them to test how close it can get to being human without being noticed. And when you do notice, it leaves, satisfied or disappointed. Others think it's a mirror effect, that when you see a faceless ghost, you're seeing yourself, the version erased by history, karma, time, the you left behind in another life. A reflection with the face wiped clean. But what if they're not showing you nothing? What if they're showing you what's underneath everything else? And what happens when the next one doesn't disappear? What if it follows you home and when you turn on the bathroom light, it's already standing behind the mirror? The mirror, woman of the bathroom. You've seen her before, just not all at once. A flash of movement in the mirror. A pale figure at the corner of your vision that vanishes the second you turn. you think it's a trick of the light, stress, fatigue. But in Japan, the legend is older than electric bulbs, and far more deliberate. She's called aka Manto by some, Hanako-san by others. But the oldest stories call her Kagami Anna the Mirror Woman. She lives in reflections, and she asks questions. It always happens in the bathroom. Usually public one-sold schools, train stations, highway rest stops, places where the lights flicker and no one notices the extra stall. Or the locked one that's never used. Or the reflection that lags by just half a second. Witnesses those who admit to seeing hair report hearing a voice first, not a presence, a whisper behind them as they wash their hands or look up from the sink. Do you want the red one or the blue? There's no right answer. Red means blood, a slit throat, a spray across the tiles that vanishes before anyone else enters. Blue means strangulation, skin drained pale, silence. Say nothing, she takes both. But this is the modern, pop-urban version. The older stories, the ones told before schoolyards and horror comics, are more subtle and worse. Kagami Onna doesn't ask questions, she just waits. One Edo-era account tells of a woman who visited an abandoned bathhouse. She looked into a cloudy mirror and saw not her reflection, but her mother long dead, smiling. When she reached out, her arm passed into the glass. She never came back. The mirror was later smashed. Inside were scratches. From the inside, the pattern is always the same. The reflection changes first. Then the sounds, breathing when you're not. Then the knock from the mirror's other side. Some believe Kagami Onna is a yurei, a ghost tied to a traumatic death. Others think she's a kami, gone wrong, a discarded household deity trapped in a broken compact, furious that her shrine was replaced with LED bulbs and cheap glass. But there's a deeper theory, barely whispered, that she's not a spirit at all. She's a remnant, from a time before humans were alone in their reflections. And if that's true, then mirrors aren't windows, they're cages. And Kagami Onna is just the one who got clever enough to ask questions. But there's something worse than her. It doesn't ask. It doesn't whisper. It climbs through. And once it's in your world, it never goes back. Because it's not trying to reflect you. It's trying to replace you. Understood. Continuing with 3 full-length mysteries in sequence, each at least 450 words, seamlessly connected and steeped in dread. The Haunted Doll Okiku. They say her hair grows. That's the headline. But it's the least disturbing part. The doll, known as Okiku, now sits in a glass case at Manendo Temple in Hokkaido, humble, silent, watching, dressed in a faded kimono, with eyes made of black glass and skin of pale porcelain. Once, she was a child's toy. Now, she is a conduit, or a prison, or maybe a mirror that breathes. The story begins in 1918. A young boy, Eikichi Suzuki, bought the doll for his 2-year-old sister, Okiku. She adored it, took it everywhere, spoke to it, slept with it. Then, suddenly, like children sometimes do, Okiku died, cold and quick, influenza. The family placed the doll on the household altar, prayed beside it. But then they noticed the hair. It was growing. Not much, just millimeters at first. But soon it needed trimming. Black, coarse hair, unmistakably human. The family was frightened, but couldn't part with the doll. So, they gave it to the monks of Manendo Temple for safekeeping. The monks still cut her hair, carefully, respectfully. They've sent samples for scientific testing. The result? It's real human hair, from a young child. But how it keeps growing from ceramic, no one can explain. Visitors report strange phenomena. Cameras malfunction. Electronic watches stop. One tourist claimed the doll's mouth was slightly open when she arrived, and closed when she returned. Others say the eyes follow you, not with movement, but with intention. And sometimes, they say, at night, from inside the sealed glass case, the doll whispers, Okiku. Or maybe it just sounds like that. Psychics refuse to touch it. Mediums feel nauseous in its presence. And once, during a brief period of renovations, the doll was relocated to another building. All temple clocks stopped for 6 hours. No one noticed until the workday ended early by mistake or warning. Some say Okiku isn't haunted at all, that the doll is alive in the oldest sense of the word, a soul anchored, not by trauma, but by recognition. She was loved. That love bound her. That love won't let go. But if love can anchor, what happens when it turns into something else? Because not every doll waits passively behind glass. Some wander. And in a tunnel far from temples, something else waits. Something not child-sized, not porcelain. But it too watches. And it doesn't want to be found. The Kiyotaki Tunnel. Just outside Kyoto, hidden in the trees like a scar carved into the earth, is the Kiyotaki Tunnel. It's short, just over 400 feet long, but stepping into it feels longer, much longer. Some say the length changes while you're inside. Measured one way, it's 444 feet. Measured again, it's 367, then 500. A joke, maybe. Or something laughing. Built in the 1920s, the tunnel was a product of forced labor. Men died here. Not metaphorically, literally. Underpaid, overworked, often buried inside the stone walls when the ceiling collapsed. And when the tunnel finally opened, it brought not progress, but misfortune. Car accidents, disappearances, suicides. The pattern is clear. People enter, but not all of them leave. Drivers report figures standing at the tunnel's far end, pale, unmoving, sometimes upside down. Others feel cold hands grip the steering wheel. A few say they've seen a woman in white floating midair, but when they stop to help, she's gone. Then the engine stalls. Then the lights fail. Then something begins to knock from inside the trunk. Legend says if you enter on foot at night, your reflection will appear beside you in the tunnel wall. Not ahead, not behind, beside. Matching your movements until it suddenly doesn't. There are also rules. Don't honk, don't look back, don't check the rearview mirror. One story tells of a cab driver who picked up a silent woman late one night near the tunnel. She gave an address but no directions. When they arrived, she was gone. The seat was wet. The cab meter kept running. The receipt printed her name. She had died 10 years earlier. A few engineers tried to seal the tunnel in 2004 after a rash of suicides. The concrete cracked from the inside out. They gave up, added better lighting, posted warning signs. But they never removed the mirror that hangs just outside the tunnel's mouth. A convex one for traffic safety. It always shows a car parked behind you. There never is one. And now, the monks say, the tunnel isn't haunted. It's awake. And deep underground, far below the road, there's a chamber, sealed off, unmapped, where some of the workers were never recovered, where the sound of digging never stopped. The cursed sword Muramasa. The most beautiful blades ever forged in Japan were not made to protect. They were made to hunger. The swordsmith Muramasa lived in the 16th century and was, by all accounts, a genius. His swords were perfectly balanced, flawlessly sharp, and terrifyingly alive. Unlike other blades, his didn't just cut, they craved blood. Soldiers wielding them reported a strange compulsion to kill. Peaceful men grew restless. Violent men became unstoppable. And when the killing was done, the sword felt heavier, as if sated. Tokugawa Ieyasu, the shogun who unified Japan, banned all Muramasa blades. His grandfather, father, and son had all died at the hands of those who carried one. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the sword doesn't care who it cuts, as long as it cuts. Even today, surviving Muramasa blades are kept under lock and shrine. Museums won't display them. Private collectors refuse to name themselves. One sword sits in a temple in Mie Prefecture, wrapped in 13 layers of silk, never touched. But sometimes, the silk grows damp. Sometimes, the blade is warm. In 1972, a man tried to sell one on the black market. He was found 2 days later in a hotel bathtub, his wrists slit. Police ruled it suicide. There were no fingerprints on the blade. The Muramasa design is distinct wave-like Haman patterns, etched with aggressive curves. But one recovered sword was unlike any other. No pattern. Just black steel, polished to such a shine that it reflects nothing. No light, no face, just void. It was unearthed in 1936 from a shrine basement sealed for centuries. No records of why it was buried. Just one note carved into the stone box: do not draw. It said the blade speaks not in words, but in feelings. A hunger behind your thoughts, a rising itch in your hands, a voice that isn't sound. And sometimes, it answers to no one. It moves. Because a weapon forged with hate doesn't serve. It waits. For war, for blood, for an emperor, or a child. It doesn't care. It just wants out. And somewhere, it's whispered, a Muramasa was never recovered. It disappeared during the Allied occupation. Last seen being transported in a wooden case, destination unknown. Some say it's in a vault. Others say it was never found because it never left its last battlefield. Still waiting. Still whispering. Still thirsty. The Seisho Seki, the killing stone. There's a stone in Nasu, Tochigi Prefecture, that has been feared for over 1,000 years. It doesn't look like much, just a cracked boulder on a patch of scorched earth, surrounded by volcanic gases and the faint smell of sulfur. But the name gives it away. Seisho Seki, the killing stone. According to legend, anyone who touches it dies. The myth begins with a woman, or rather, something wearing a woman. Tamamo no Me, a legendary courtesan of perfect beauty and flawless intelligence, who served the imperial court during the Heian period. But she wasn't human. She was a 9-tailed fox spirit, a kitsune, who had taken the form of a woman to seduce and destroy the emperor. When her deception was discovered, she fled into the countryside, shedding her disguise and revealing her true form. Warriors pursued her and struck her down in the mountains of Nasu. Where she fell, her body became stone, or so they say, and that stone began to kill. For centuries, animals that wandered too close died. Birds dropped from the sky. Travelers fell ill. Monks attempted purification rituals. One died during the chant. Another lost his voice. The area around the stone became dead land. Even plants refused to grow. Local priests eventually sealed the spirit with ofude paper talismans, but the belief persisted that the fox spirit was merely sleeping, trapped, listening. Then, in 2022, the stone cracked. Split clean in half. There had been no earthquake, no lightning strike, no vandalism. It just broke, cleanly, silently. The news spread quickly. Photos went viral. And online, people joked nervously, "She's free now." Except no one laughed for long. Soon after, tourists reported sightings of a woman in white near the site too, pale, too still, disappearing into heat shimmer. A few claimed she smiled. Others said she whispered something, "Mada oware inai." It's not over yet. Locals avoid the place after dusk. Geologists blame natural wear. Priests replaced the ofuda, but the energy changed. Pilgrims began leaving offerings again, not for healing, but for appeasement. Theories abound. Some say Tamamo no Me was never a fox at all, but something older that took that form to make itself more acceptable. Others believe the stone wasn't a prison but a seal, and the seal broke not because of erosion, but because of timing. The fox was just a story. The real thing is still beneath the ground, still hungry. And if a cracked stone can release one spirit, how many more are just waiting for a fault line? Because the next mystery isn't legendary. It's buried beneath a city, and it's still breathing. Even though there's no one down there. At least, no one alive. The Inunaki village. You won't find it on any map. Nestled somewhere between the mist-heavy forests of Fukuoka Prefecture and the decaying remains of the Inunaki Tunnel lies the ghost of a place called Inunaki Village. A place where, according to whispered stories, Japan's constitution does not apply. The first mention comes from a fax letter to a local television station in the late 1980s. The message read, "I escaped Inunaki Village. They tried to kill me. Don't go through the tunnel." And like all good warnings, it was ignored. Inunaki Tunnel, long abandoned, has its own history of suicides and disappearances. But deeper in the mountains, there are rumors of a village untouched by time, where signs warn outsiders to stay away, and the locals speak in an archaic dialect. One infamous sign, allegedly posted at the village entrance, reads, "The Japanese constitution is not in effect here." Some who go looking for it report finding overgrown paths, foundations of buildings, rusted swing sets. Others find nothing at all. One group of hikers claimed they followed a dirt trail that circled back, even though they never turned. Another group filmed a shed with power, still running, no cables, no lines, just a light, swinging. Those who claim to have found Inunaki speak of hostile stares, of a man with a cleaver, of people without faces, not blank, but blurred, like an old VHS left on too long. A few escape. They don't talk much after. In 1999, a gruesome murder occurred near the tunnel. Teenagers abducted and burned a man alive in a phone booth. No one ever explained why. Some say they'd gone looking for the village. Others say they brought something back. Urban legend? Maybe. Except one investigator went silent after publishing a book on Inunaki's true history. His final note was a map with a red circle that led to nothing. And yet, cell signals vanish in that part of the forest. Compasses spin, GPS fails, people hear ringing in their ears, a voice like static, whispering, calling them further in. Maybe the village never existed. Maybe it always has. Or maybe Inunaki is a wound where belief bled so heavily that reality bent to hold it. And somewhere inside that wound, the clocks still tick. And in a box buried beneath what used to be the schoolhouse, there's a phone. It hasn't rung in years. But every now and then, someone answers it anyway. The phantom train of Aomori. No tracks, no station, no warning. Just a light, gliding silently across the snowy hills of Aomori Prefecture. The phantom train, as it's now called, has been reported since the 1950s. It appears between midnight and 3 a.m., moving across open land where no train should be. Witnesses describe a full locomotive, black, rusted, windows glowing with a sickly green hue. It never stops, never slows, and if you're too close, you might just hear the passengers. But when people follow it, there's nothing. No tracks, no prints in the snow, no heat signature, no engine. Just frost on the trees and the faint scent of smoke. One old railway worker claims he saw it from a watchtower in 1961. Said the train ran through the old line closed during the war. A line that was bombed, buried, never rebuilt. Except, what if it never stopped running? In 1987, a teenage boy went missing near the old tunnels outside Shugaru. His camera was found months later, half buried in the snow. One photo remained. The front of a train, impossibly close, headlights flaring. No reflection, no rail. And then there's the passenger manifest. An urban explorer found it in a collapsed station basement, moldy, torn, names written in ink that hadn't faded, names of people who died in train crashes, names that hadn't been born yet, and scribbled across the bottom. We never arrived. Some think the train is a looped trauma playing, a crash that history tried to forget. Others say it's a collector gathering souls that get lost in the snow. A vehicle not bound to tracks, but to regret. And every winter, more sightings, more lights, more muffled sounds of wheels on no rail. Just one piece of advice. If you see it, don't wave. Because sometimes it slows just enough to think you belong on board. The spirit of Oiwa. She is not a ghost. Not in the floating, fluttering, mournful sense. Oiwa is rage, given hormone of Japan's most infamous yurei, born not of tragedy, but of injustice, so foul it tore through the veil between life and death. Her story begins in the 17th century, with a woman named Oiwa, married to a low-ranking samurai named Tamiya Imon. They were poor, ordinary, struggling. But Imon wanted more wealth, power, status, and Oiwa was in the way, so he plotted. He poisoned her. Slowly, quietly, enough to deform her face. Her eyes sagged, her skin blistered, her hair fell out in clumps. He then sent her away, declared her unfit, and took another woman. Wealthier, prettier, politically useful, but Oiwa, disfigured and discarded, didn't just die, she refused. According to the legend, as she perished, Oiwa swore revenge not just on Ieamon, but on all who knew and said nothing, not just in life, in eternity. And the curse began immediately. On Ieamon's wedding night, he saw Oiwa's face on his new bride. He struck her down in terror only to find he'd murdered his new wife, or maybe the servant, or his own child. Stories differ, but the killing never stopped. Those around him died. He fled. She followed. Her distorted face began appearing in lanterns, in reflections, in walls. Not weeping, not begging, smiling. Her story was later dramatized in the kabuki play Yotsuya Kaidan, which has its own legacy of horror. Productions of the play are notoriously cursed. Actors fall ill, props malfunction, theaters catch fire. To this day, before any performance, actors visit her grave in Tokyo to ask permission and forgiveness. Yes, she has a grave, but the ground doesn't feel settled. Visitors report sudden headaches, electrical surges, and once, in 2002, a student filming a documentary near the site went missing for 4 hours. His camera footage later revealed he'd been standing still completely, motionless facing a tree. When asked what he saw, he simply said, "A mirror that wouldn't break." Oiwa is more than a ghost. She's an echo of punishment, a moral correction woven into the fabric of space, a reminder that betrayal leaves marks and some wounds cut upward from hell to heaven. And if you think she's just a story, remember this: her spirit has been invoked in court cases, in political protests, even in exorcisms outside Japan. Because you don't have to believe in her for her to believe in you. And sometimes, the curse isn't a woman. Sometimes, it's a place. Still sealed, still steaming. Still too quiet for something that used to burn. The fires of Mount Osor. Mount Osoreth, mountain of dread, is not just a volcano. It's a threshold. Located in the remote wilderness of Aomori, surrounded by sulfur lakes and volcanic rock, it is believed to be the Japanese entrance to the underworld Jigoku, the land of the dead. And it smells like it. The air is thick with sulfur. The ground hisses with steam. The earth, cracked and scorched, seems to whisper with each footstep. There's no wildlife, no birdsong. Just wind in the faint, rhythmic clinking of Jizo statues. They line the path to the summit's small stone figures in red bibs and hats, guardians of dead children. Parents who lost their sons and daughters place toys beside them. Pacifiers, dolls, letters no one reads. And then, there are the Itako, blind female shamans, trained from childhood to act as mediums. Once a year, during the Itako Taisai festival, they come to Osore to speak with the dead. Families line up for hours to hear messages from their loved ones spoken in voices that sound nothing like the Itako's own. Skeptics say it's performance, ritualized grief. But some visitors walk away from the mountain with knowledge they could not have had. Details of affairs, confessions never shared, secret illnesses revealed by dead relatives, and some don't walk away at all. There are tales of visitors feeling dragged toward the sulfur, sprinkled by unseen hands, of shadows that appear in photographs where no one stood. One tourist claimed she heard her mother's voice whispering her name near the hot spring, except her mother had been dead for years. She followed the voice into the steam. She was found hours later, barefoot and burned, unable to speak. And then there's the Lake Usori, still, mirror-like, green as poison. No fish live in it, no insects skim its surface. Locals say it's the passage where the souls cross over. Children throw pebbles to help the dead reach the far shore. One priest confessed, before his death, that he once saw something rise from the lake during a lightning storm. Not a body, not a person. Something watching, waiting to be remembered. And what Osore really teaches you is this: hell isn't hot. It's quiet. And sometimes, all it takes to open its gates is to speak the name of someone you wish you hadn't forgotten. And deep beneath Osore, where the oldest stones hum and no one digs, there are bones wrapped in iron. Not human. Not animal. Something else. The bones, wrapped in iron. They weren't supposed to be found. During a small, unauthorized excavation near the edge of Lake Usori in the 1950s, a group of amateur archaeologists uncovered something the priests refused to talk about for decades: bones. But not in a grave, and not buried. Wrapped in iron bands and packed in layers of salt and ash, they were folded beneath a collapsed stone shrine. The bones were large, too large, the femur alone nearly a meter. Not quite animal. Not quite human. Something in between. The skeleton was incomplete, the skull missing, and at the center, between the rib cage, was a mirror. Cracked. Officials arrived. The site was sealed. The bones were taken. The reports were shredded, or never made. But one photo survives, grainy, black and white. It shows an elongated spine, curled unnaturally, as if resisting burial. Next to it, a talisman, etched in kanji no scholar has translated. Not fully. Just two characters stand out. Sealed God. The mirror was studied by a university lab before it was removed from records. It contained no reflection. No light bounced off it. Just depth. As if it were a hole. And that was when the earthquake started. Not large, not violent, just persistent. Shivers in the stone. Tremors no seismograph picked up, but which shook every bell in the temple. The shrine above was never rebuilt. The monks stopped offering tours, and one, when drunk, admitted the truth. We didn't bury it to hide it. We buried it so it wouldn't look at us anymore. What was it? A failed god? A cursed bodhisattva? Something older than either? The bones are now lost, or stored, or burned. But a rumor circulates that a piece of the iron band still exists in a vault beneath the National Museum. Unlabeled, filed under miscellaneous metallurgy. Sometimes it rattles, and so we don't dig anymore. Because the earth remembers. And sometimes, it stores what the gods tried to delete. What if bones are not remains? What if they're warnings? What if the next one we find isn't missing its skull? What if it's missing its mouth because it was never meant to speak again? The Mouthless Woman of Ueno Park. Ueno Park is a place of beauty blossoms in spring, museums in marble, lanterns glowing softly against the dusk. Tourists come for the zoo, for the festivals, for the illusion of calm in the heart of Tokyo. But after the sun sets, when the crowds thin and the last jogger disappears, the park becomes something else. That's when people see her. She's always described the same way: pale, black-haired, perfectly still, dressed in white or soft blue, sometimes kneeling, sometimes standing, and always looking away until you get too close. Then she turns, and you see her face. She has no mouth, no scar, no skin, just smooth, porcelain nothing where her lips should be. No nose, no eyes, just shadows in the shape of absence. And she doesn't scream. You do. Some believe she's a modern incarnation of Kuchisake Onna, the slit-mouthed woman. But this one isn't asking questions. She doesn't offer you a choice. She doesn't chase you. She just stares, then vanishes. And that would be enough to haunt a place, but it gets worse. People who see her begin to lose their words. Not all at once, just syllables, then names, then the ability to describe faces. One man forgot what his own wife looked like. A woman couldn't remember the word for mirror. A boy stopped speaking entirely, just drew circles with a black crayon until the paper tore through. MRI scans showed nothing. Brain scans, clean, but always the same expression, wide-eyed, as if listening to something behind them. A researcher once left a recording device overnight near the pond where she's most often seen. What it captured was 19 hours of silence except for a single second of wet clicking. When reversed and slowed down, it sounded like something trying to form a word, and then failing. Linguists dismissed it. Auditory pareidolia. But the file was corrupted shortly after. The backup was blank. The hard drive melted. There are older stories, too. Edo period scrolls describe a woman of wax and water who appeared in the mirror lake and took voices from children. One monk called her the listener who eats sound. What if she's not a ghost? What if she's a vessel? A mouth that once was, and now isn't because it gave something away, or had it taken. And if that's true, then we're not alone in Ueno Park at night. We're being cataloged. And not far from the park, deep in the archives of an abandoned library, there's a book that no one wrote filled with words that change when you read them out loud. The Shrine That Moves. There's a shrine in the mountains of Gifu Prefecture that doesn't stay put. Small, wooden, red torii gate faded to gray, no nameplate, no priest, just a bell that never rings and a donation box that never stays full. Villagers call it Kami-sama no Fumikiri, the God's Crossing. And it moves. Sometimes uphill, sometimes across rice fields. Once, it appeared in the middle of a dry stream bed that hadn't flowed in 40 years. The next day, it was gone. In its place, a stone coin. Smooth, blank, still warm. No one's seen it move. They just wake up, and it's somewhere else. Always, just out of sight. Always visible for only a few days before it vanishes again. A woman once tried to follow it, camped near where it had been spotted. On the third night, she walked into the woods after seeing its lantern lit. Her tent was found collapsed, her phone melted, her shoes facing backward, and carved into the nearest tree, 6 characters. We moved because you watched. Inside the shrine when it lets you near there's no statue, just a mirror, and the reflection isn't yours. One monk who briefly studied it described the feeling as looking into something with a pulse. A professor from Kyoto claimed the shrine matches descriptions from Heian period travel journals, but it shouldn't exist anymore. The materials are too modern, the nails too recent. Yet, the prayers found scribbled on the inner walls are written in languages no longer spoken. So what is it? A spiritual checkpoint? A roaming tear in geography? A kami with legs? Or maybe it's a door that refuses to stay closed. Because sometimes, if you wait beside it long enough, the mirror flashes not with light, but with a face you don't recognize. And it's smiling. Because it already knows where you'll see the shrine next. Outside your window, the shrine that moves. There's a shrine in the mountains of Gifu Prefecture that doesn't stay put. Small, wooden, red torii gate faded to gray, no nameplate, no priest, just a bell that never rings and a donation box that never stays full. Villagers call it Kami-sama no Fumikiri, the God's Crossing. And it moves. Sometimes uphill, sometimes across rice fields. Once, it appeared in the middle of a dry stream bed that hadn't flowed in 40 years. The next day, it was gone. In its place, a stone coin. Smooth, blank, still warm. No one's seen it move. They just wake up, and it's somewhere else. Always, just out of sight. Always visible for only a few days before it vanishes again. A woman once tried to follow it, camped near where it had been spotted. On the third night, she walked into the woods after seeing its lantern lit. Her tent was found collapsed, her phone melted, her shoes facing backward, and carved into the nearest tree, 6 characters. We moved because you watched. Inside the shrine when it lets you near there's no statue. Just a mirror, and the reflection isn't yours. One monk who briefly studied it described the feeling as looking into something with a pulse. A professor from Kyoto claimed the shrine matches descriptions from Heian period travel journals, but it shouldn't exist anymore. The materials are too modern, the nails too recent. Yet, the prayers found scribbled on the inner walls are written in languages no longer spoken. So what is it? A spiritual checkpoint? A roaming tear in geography? A kami with legs? Or maybe it's a door that refuses to stay closed. Because sometimes, if you wait beside it long enough, the mirror flashes not with light, but with a face you don't recognize. And it's smiling. Because it already knows where you'll see the shrine next. Outside your window, the melting man of Mount Tate. They said he was a climber. Experienced, solo, that he'd hiked Mount Tate every year on the same day midwinter, no matter the weather. Locals called him quiet, ritualistic, respectful. But in 1994, he didn't come back down. The search party found his gear intact, tent upright, boots laced, food uneaten, but he wasn't there. Until 3 days later, when a park ranger saw something crawling near the base of a hot spring, something that looked like it used to be a man. He had no name tag, no face. He was melting. His skin sloughed off in thick sheets, his eyes had fused, his mouth hung open but no sound came, and yet there were no burns, no signs of exposure to heat or chemicals. His organs were intact. He was structurally unharmed, just losing cohesion, like a wax figure slowly forgetting what it was supposed to be. He died in silence. Autopsy inconclusive. The government sealed the report. But the rumors began immediately, that he'd gone beyond the shrine at the summit, that he'd opened something, that he'd seen something that didn't want to be remembered. The monks at Oyama Shrine refused to speak of it. One offered only this: there are kami that were never meant to be named. Since then, hikers have reported strange heat blooms near the trail pockets of tropical warmth and sub-zero snow. Others claim to see footprints that don't match any known animal, 3-toed, wide, sunk deep into ice that hadn't melted. And always the same phrase etched into rocks: carved by unknown hands. The form is a lie. In 2018, a pair of students live-streamed their ascent. Halfway up, the feed glitchedly to resume with the pair standing motionless in their tent, grinning, unmoving, unblinking. The stream ended 17 minutes later. They were found 2 days after alive, dehydrated, both with their fingerprints worn off. They never spoke again. Some say there's a cave near the summit, unmarked, unmapped, seen only once. Inside, smooth walls, no frost, and something embedded in the rock that shimmers under skin, but not light. And so Mount Tate remains open. Tourists hike, locals pray, but the monks know the truth. The mountain isn't a place, it's a mask. And it's starting to slip. The sound that comes at 4:44. No alarm, no phone call, no warning. Just a sound, soft and low, like a breath pressed through metal tubing. It starts at 4:44 a.m. exactly for those who are awake, but alone. You can't record it, can't predict it. You only hear it once, and when you do, something has already changed. In 2001, a man in Osaka filed a noise complaint with the city after claiming to hear a tone every morning just before dawn. No source, no machines. The sound came from beneath the floorboards, he said, but no one else could hear it. He stopped filing complaints after a week. His neighbors didn't. They filed for eviction after his apartment windows began fogging on the outside, despite no weather. He disappeared soon after. Inside his unit, one thing left a clock, stopped at 4:44. In Japanese culture, the number 4 is pronounced shi, which also means death. 444s are never printed on license plates, rarely on hotel room doors. But 444 isn't about superstition. It's a frequency. Scientists in Tokyo tested EM readings in apartments where the sound had been reported. The frequency doesn't match any industrial machine. It's not subsonic, it's too clean. One physicist called it mathematically intentional. After exposure, subjects reported similar symptoms: nosebleeds, minor hallucinations, a sense of being watched from above, not behind, not below, above. One claimed to see geometric shapes in their vision, symbols, always in threes, always repeating. Those who heard the sound a second time were never the same. Speech patterns shifted. Eye movements became erratic. One man stopped recognizing mirrors. Another only recognized himself in mirrors and nowhere else. A boy in Chiba tried to replicate the tone using a synthesizer. He got close enough that his cat vanished, and his parents began dreaming in languages they didn't know. People say if you hear it, the first symptom is remembering something that never happened. The second is seeing a figure through windows that aren't there. And the third is silence. Because after the third night, the sound stops. Because it's inside now. The lantern that burns cold. It looks ordinary. A bronze lantern, shaped like any other squat, 6-paneled, faded with age. But it doesn't emit heat. It emits absence. This lantern sits behind an iron gate in a private temple garden in Kanazawa, locked away from visitors. There's no plaque, no name, just a quiet warning from the monks. It remembers who you are. According to local legend, the lantern was forged in the 1400s by a metalsmith whose wife had vanished. He built it from offerings left at her shrine, melted together in grief. Bronze, iron, a sliver of jade, her hair. When it was lit, it gave off not firelight, but a chill that made candles go out and ink freeze in pens. People who stood near it reported seeing images in its panels, reflections of themselves doing things they never remembered. One woman saw herself carrying a child. She was infertile. A soldier saw himself burying a sword. He'd never been to war. Then the burns started. Not on their skin, on their shadow. Wherever they walked, their shadow left behind a trace, as if scorched onto stone. The monks buried the lantern beneath the garden for centuries. It was uncovered during renovations in 1977. Since then, nothing has grown in that soil. Thermal cameras aimed at it register negative temperatures, but only for one frame. Then, the device dies. A filmmaker once tried to record the light it emitted. His footage came back blank except for 1 second of clear video. His own face, asleep in his bed, lit by the lantern's glow. He lived alone. Some say the lantern doesn't illuminate the present. It illuminates possibilities, things that could have been, or should not be. One monk described it best. It burns with memory, not yours, its own. And it's still lit, somehow, without fuel, without fire. So the monks keep it caged, not to protect it, but to protect you. Because if it ever goes out, they believe we won't remember who we are, only who we could have been. And what's left after that doesn't belong in this world. The man with the umbrella who doesn't leave footprints. In a quiet district of Kawasaki, near a small river that always seems too still, locals have started reporting sightings, not of a ghost, not of a criminal, just a man, ordinary, unmemorable, except for 2 details. He always wears a dark gray suit, and he always carries an umbrella, even when it isn't raining. They say he walks the same route every night, starting near the Komukai Bridge and heading north through the residential streets, never looking up, never changing pace. If you try to talk to him, he stops. Not like a man interrupted, like a machine, pausing. Then he turns. And that's when people notice the 3rd detail. He has no face, not a blank surface. Just the impression of one shadows where features should be, as if someone erased him from a photo without removing the man himself. But perhaps most disturbing, he leaves no footprints. Snow, mud, rain, it doesn't matter. The ground behind him remains untouched. Not even displaced leaves, like he's not really touching the earth at all. The first official sighting was in 1999. A woman reported a man standing in the middle of the street during a downpour, holding his umbrella perfectly still despite gale-force winds. She passed him by. Looked back. He was gone. A week later, she stopped speaking. Only wrote the word "folded" over and over on her mirror. Security footage from a local storefront briefly captured him in 2007. One frame. Walking past. Next frame. Gone. The rain was falling diagonally across the lens, but not on him. Some believe he's a Yuria ghost repeating his final walk. But if that were true, his path would loop. It doesn't. Each year, it shifts a little further north, closer to the train lines, closer to the crowds. Others think he's not a ghost at all. They point to ancient umbrella, folklore kasa obake, spirits that inhabit abandoned umbrellas. But those are playful, tricksters. This one isn't playing. It's watching. And once a year, someone disappears along his route, just steps off the sidewalk and vanishes. No signs of struggle, no footprints. Just an open umbrella, neatly folded, standing upright where they were last seen. Some say if you follow him to the end of his walk, he'll stop and tilt the umbrella toward you. Don't look, because what's inside isn't shadow. It's another street, another sky, one where you're walking and he's watching. The shrine beneath the department store. In the basement of a now closed Tokyo department store, behind a sealed fire door and 2 layers of plasterboard, there is a shrine. Not a decorative one. Not a commercial novelty. A real one, Shinto. But wrong. It was discovered by accident in 2015. During renovations, workers broke through the wall expecting storage. What they found was a single room, stone-lined, lit only by a cracked skylight and the flicker of an old oil lamp that should have been out decades ago. Inside stood a torii gate, barely taller than a child, made of stone so dark it absorbed light. Beneath it, a mirror, warped and clouded. And in front of that, a small table holding 3 teeth, a comb, and a coil of what looked like human hair. No one could explain how the shrine had been built, or why. The building's records made no mention of it, no permits, no blueprints. But some older employees remembered something. Whispers from the 70s. An unspoken rule. Never go down past B2 after hours. They thought it was superstition, until the lights started flickering on every night at 2 o'clock, a.m.in, a building with no power. A priest was brought in. He entered the shrine room and collapsed immediately, his mouth filled with black water. He survived, but never returned to the city. His final words to the foreman: "It's not a kami, it's what kami leave behind when they die." The building was sold, renovations halted, the basement sealed again, but the security cameras still record brief shadows crossing the doorway from the inside. Once, the footage showed something stepping out. It looked like a woman, then like a child, then like you. But the timestamp read 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. And the file couldn't be deleted. They say the shrine isn't a place of worship, it's a trap, built to contain a god that failed, or fell, or simply got tired of being remembered. And if the mirror ever clears, if the hair ever moves, then the door reopens. And the floor you're standing on might not be a basement. It might be the roof of something older. Something still waking up. The static-faced children. They appear in photos, mostly. At the edges of school trips, in class pictures, on festival nights. Children, always children aged 8 to 12, uniforms slightly outdated, shoes scuffed, never in focus, but always facing the camera. And their faces are static. Not blurred, not distorted, static like old television snow, like the signal is broken. No eyes, no mouths, just the texture of an image that shouldn't exist. The phenomenon has been documented since the early 1980s. Film, VHS, digital, doesn't matter. The kids appear for a frame or two, then vanish, except when they don't. One teacher reported a child standing in the hallway who didn't match any roster. She took a photo. Static face. When she turned back, he was gone. Her camera's memory card was full of the same image. 77 copies. All slightly different. All staring. Facial recognition software fails on them. Worse, it crashes. In one case, the software generated a name. Do not look. The file was automatically encrypted. No one could open it. There are theories, of course, that they're tulpas accidental spirits formed by attention, that they're echoes of children who died unseen, now trying to insert themselves into memories, or that they're something far older, using the concept of a child as a mask. Because everyone lets a child stand nearby, everyone lets their guard down, until the static begins. Some say they aren't just in photos anymore. That sometimes, late at night, they knock on doors, very softly. And if you look through the peephole, you won't see a child. You'll see yourself as a child. But the face still isn't yours. The girl in the red raincoat. In Sapporo, during the first snowfall of the year, someone always sees her. She's not running, not lost. Just standing on a street corner, wearing a bright red raincoat and no shoes. Always the same height, always the same coat, and always staring upward into the snow. People stop to help her. Of course they do. But when they get close, they notice something's off. Her breath doesn't fog, her coat isn't wet, and her feet leave no prints in the snow. Sometimes she smiles. Sometimes she cries, but no one hears either, because her mouth is stitched shut. Police reports date back to the 1960s. Same girl, same coat, same street. Locals started calling her Yuki Akachan the Snow Baby. Some believe she died during a blizzard while waiting for a mother who never came. Others claim she's the echo of a child abandoned during the war. A third theory suggests something much older kami of loneliness, bound to the snow, doomed to wait. The odd thing, she only appears to those who are thinking about someone they've lost. Not casually. Deeply. Grief, it seems, is her invitation. And if she notices you noticing her, she reaches out, with one pale hand, asking silently to be taken somewhere warm. But she doesn't feel cold. She feels like paper. A man once took her coat, just picked it up after she vanished. He kept it for a week before his wife found him asleep in the snow shirtless, eyes frozen open, whispering, she wanted to be remembered. No one remembers his name. But the coat? It was folded neatly beside him. Still warm. The girl in the red raincoat. In Sapporo, during the first snowfall of the year, someone always sees her. She's not running, not lost. Just standing on a street corner, wearing a bright red raincoat and no shoes. Always the same height, always the same coat, and always staring upward into the snow. People stop to help her. Of course they do. But when they get close, they notice something's off. Her breath doesn't fog, her coat isn't wet, and her feet leave no prints in the snow. Sometimes she smiles. Sometimes she cries. But no one hears either. Because her mouth is stitched shut. Police reports date back to the 1960s. Same girl, same coat, same street. Locals started calling her Yuki Akachan the Snow Baby. Some believe she died during a blizzard while waiting for a mother who never came. Others claim she's the echo of a child abandoned during the war. A third theory suggests something much older kami of loneliness, bound to the snow, doomed to wait. The odd thing, she only appears to those who are thinking about someone they've lost. Not casually. Deeply. Grief, it seems, is her invitation. And if she notices you noticing her, she reaches out, with one pale hand, asking silently to be taken somewhere warm. But she doesn't feel cold. She feels like paper. A man once took her coat, just picked it up after she vanished. He kept it for a week before his wife found him asleep in the snow shirtless, eyes frozen open, whispering, she wanted to be remembered. No one remembers his name. But the coat? It was folded neatly beside him. Still warm. The hands that knock from the drain. A family in Nagoya installed a new bathtub in 2008. Everything was fine for a week. Then the knocking started. Soft at first, just under the drain, as if something was tapping on the pipes from below. Plumbers checked the lines. Found nothing. No animals. No clogs. No faults. But the knocks persisted. They got louder. Rhythmic. Then came the scratches. Not from inside the tub, from underneath it. The family started keeping the bathroom door locked, but some nights they'd still hear the click of the faucet turning on by itself, or find the mirror fogged with handprints that didn't match anyone's. Then the daughter disappeared. Police found no sign of forced entry, just a trail of wet footprints from her bedroom into the bathroom. The tub was full, but they drained it. Empty, except for nail marks in the ceramic. It said the house was built over an old well one that was never properly sealed, just filled and paved over. But wells are like wounds. They don't close, they wait. And something in the pipes was reaching up. They moved out. The next family lasted a month. Now the house is empty. But some nights, neighbors hear water running and knocking. And if you walk past at just the right time, you might hear a voice beneath the drain, asking, "Can I come out now?" The man inside the vending machine. Japan is full of vending machines, millions of them. On sidewalks, in back alleys, outside shrines. They're always there glowing softly, humming faintly, offering you a cold drink or hot coffee in a paper can. But in Yamanashi Prefecture, there's one machine that doesn't sell anything. It just waits. It looks normal at first. Faded, a little older, set back from the road, half swallowed by ivy. The display lights up when you approach, but there are no labels, no product names, no prices, just a keypad and a digital screen that reads, "Select number." Press anything, and it says, "Item dispensing," but nothing comes out. Until one night in 2013, a traveler walking alone tried it as a joke, pressed 44. The machine buzzed, and a human eye appeared behind the glass. Just for a second. Then the screen blinked. "Thank you for your face." The man ran. He never went public, but he told a friend. The story got out. Now urban explorers go looking for it. Most never find it. But a few do. And when they press the buttons, sometimes the screen shows their name. Sometimes it offers something strange. Do you want your reflection back? Would you like to meet who's been watching you? One man pressed yes. The machine dispensed a mirror, cracked and rusted. His reflection was smiling, but he wasn't. Later that night, he was found on the side of the road, blind in both eyes. The vending machine? Gone. Locals believe it's cursed. Or worse, that it's not a machine at all, but a gateway, disguised as something familiar, a lure. Because there's something comforting about a vending machine, something inviting. You never question what's inside. But what if what's inside is thirsty for you? The apartment with the extra room. Tokyo real estate is tight, expensive, predictable. One room, maybe two. If you're lucky, a closet. But in Setagaya, a tenant moved into a second-floor apartment and noticed something strange. The floor plan didn't match the space. The kitchen was smaller, the hallway was shorter. One wall sounded hollow. He tapped it, knocked, measured. There was a missing meter of space. No door, no window, just wall. He asked the landlord. She went pale and said, "That room hasn't been open since 1982. He pried the wall open. Inside was a perfectly preserved bedroom, dustless, quiet, lit by a single bare bulb. A child's room, with toys neatly arranged, a futon folded, a single diary on the floor. He read it. The entries stopped mid-sentence on the 8th of January, 1982. The final line? "I think someone else is writing in my dreams." That night, he woke up to the sound of writing. Not in the walls. In his head. He left a week later, reported nothing. But neighbors started hearing a child's voice from that apartment, laughing, reciting names, not theirs, yours. The temple with no entrance. In the mountains of Kumamoto, locals speak of a temple you cannot enter but that you sometimes exit from. It appears only during fog. A traditional wooden gate, a moss-covered stone path, lanterns lit with blue fire. Travelers swear they see people walking toward it, then vanishing. The next village over has a record, a list of names. People who returned. Returned from where? No one knows. They don't speak. They don't sleep. They just wait. And at night, they hum a low, endless chant that never resolves, never repeats. One researcher got close, took photos, all corrupted. His voice changed for weeks after. He wrote in his journal, "I saw the entrance, but the door was on the ceiling. Some say the temple is for gods who retired. Others say it's not a temple at all. It's a mouth. And what walks out of it wears your face like a polite apology. Just long enough for you to say, 'I think I've been here before.' The woman who waits at the crossing. There's a train crossing on the outskirts of Nagano, halfway between rice paddies and a road that never leads anywhere fast. During the day, it's nothing. A blink and you miss it stretch of countryside. But after midnight, something waits there. A woman. She stands perfectly still beside the crossing gates. Long black hair, pale dress, no shoes, not moving, not looking, just waiting. You can drive by, walk past, ride your bike. She won't stop you, unless the gates come down. Then you're trapped. And she turns around. Those who've seen her face say it's not quite human. The features are all there, but misaligned too close together or too far apart. As if something tried to imitate a woman from memory and got the spacing wrong. The train that passes at that hour doesn't run on any schedule. And if you check, no train should be running at that time at all. People who wait at the crossing too long report hearing whispers behind them, words they used to know but forgot. Childhood names, dead pets, a lullaby sung in reverse. One teenager who filmed the crossing caught her on camera, just a silhouette, until the video froze and the sound warped into static and breath. When he played it back later, she was gone from the footage. But in the reflection of the car's windshield, she was closer. Some say she's waiting for a train that will never come. Others say she is the train. And if you're still at the crossing when the lights stop blinking, when the bells fall silent, you'll hear footsteps on gravel. And then she'll ask, "Are you going home?" No one knows the right answer. The mirror in the storage unit. In an unassuming self-storage facility in Yokohama, there's a unit that's always rented, but no one ever comes to check on it. No name on the registry, no ID on file, just cash payments and time in envelopes. The manager once opened it by mistake. Inside was a mirror, floor to ceiling, framed in black lacquer. No dust, no signs of age, just the mirror and the smell of something rotted. He said it didn't show his reflection. It showed him, yes, but turned away, facing the other direction, wearing different clothes, standing in a room that wasn't the unit. Then the reflection turned around and smiled. He closed the unit, never opened it again. Months later, a cleaner reported voices coming from inside, a child's laughter, a knock, then a whisper, "Come look, I fixed the version of you." Security footage outside the unit glitches every few nights just for a second. When frozen, the frame shows the door slightly ajar, a hand reaching out, thin, wrong, reflected. The mirror never moved. The unit still rented. But once a year, the door is found open, and one item from another storage unit is inside the mirror room, reflected but altered. A doll with human eyes, a book with no words, a phone playing a voicemail from someone who never existed. Experts say it's a hoax, but one man walked in on a dare. He never came out. The mirror just shows him, smiling, holding a key. To another unit? To your unit. The teeth in the forest. Near Aokigahara, but not inside it. There's a smaller, forgotten forest. No trails, no signage, just trees and silence. Hikers avoid it not out of fear, but out of instinct. Because if you stray too far in, you'll start finding them. Teeth. Human. Child-sized. Some filed down, some gold-capped, arranged in circles, patterns, spirals pressed into the dirt. No blood, no bones, just teeth. One explorer followed a trail of them and found a clearing where the trees grew in a perfect ring. In the center, a small wooden shrine, broken. Inside it, a jawbone, set like an offering. He took a photo. It didn't develop. The next day, he woke up with blood in his mouth. A tooth gone. No wound, no pain, just missing. He never went back. Locals say the forest is where a sect once tried to grow gods from bones, that they planted teeth like seeds and waited. Some say they succeeded, because sometimes, late at night, the wind doesn't move the trees, but the ground pulses like something breathing. And if you listen closely, beneath the leaves, you'll hear chewing. Not animals. Something learning how to smile. The staircase that only goes down. In a suburb outside Osaka, hidden behind a derelict pachinko parlor and a concrete retaining wall, there's a staircase that isn't on any city plan. It's narrow, steep, moss-covered. Locals call it Shitadake Kaidan, the stairs that only go down. No one remembers when it first appeared. If you descend them, you'll notice something strange. It's always dusk. Even in daylight. Your phone loses signal. GPS spins. And the bottom never seems to get closer. People describe the same sensation, their own breathing growing distant, like it's echoing off walls that aren't there. One man counted 108 steps, another 211. One woman walked down for over an hour and emerged above where she started. But some never return. Police investigated once, years ago, sent an officer with a body cam. The footage showed him descending calmly, joking, then slowing, stopping. The last words heard were, "There's someone else here." Then static. Then the sound of something walking up the stairs. He was never found. Graffiti on the retaining wall changes. Names appear, some of the missing, some that haven't disappeared yet. A monk once claimed, "The stairs are a remnant of a buried shrine, inverted. A holy site turned inside out, made to lead not to heaven, but something older than death." He sprinkled salt at the top. It turned black. People still find the stairs, mostly by accident. And if you try to mark the way with chalk or tape, it fades. The staircase resets. The moss regrows. The path forgets you. The only consistent warning is scrawled in tiny hiragana near the top step. Don't look behind you. No one who has broken that rule has come back to explain what happens when you do. The doll in the drainage tunnel. In the industrial district of Kobe, beneath a disused overpass, there's a tunnel meant to redirect stormwater. Concrete, bone dry most of the year. Taggers and urban explorers sometimes venture in. They all report the same thing. The doll. Porcelain, traditional, kimono red and gold, just sitting there, always halfway down, facing the exit, eyes open. If you walk past it, nothing happens. But if you touch it, if you even think of moving it, you'll hear water begin to drip. Then trickle, then rush. A flash flood. From nowhere, only in the tunnel. But the water isn't wet. One boy who escaped said it felt like hands pulling at his ankles, stroking his face. When he got out, the doll was gone. It reappeared the next week. One man claimed it whispered to him, told him a name. He went home and found a photo of a sister he'd never known he had. She'd drowned before he was born. Locals avoid the tunnel. Call the doll Ame Ninyote, rain doll. No shrine accepts it. No priest will move it. And every rainy season, it creeps closer to the mouth of the tunnel. Waiting. The doll in the drainage tunnel. In the industrial district of Kobe, beneath a disused overpass, there's a tunnel meant to redirect stormwater. Concrete, bone dry most of the year. Taggers and urban explorers sometimes venture in. They all report the same thing. The doll. Porcelain, traditional, kimono red and gold, just sitting there, always halfway down, facing the exit, eyes open. If you walk past it, nothing happens. But if you touch it, if you even think of moving it, you'll hear water begin to drip. Then trickle, then rush. A flash flood. From nowhere, only in the tunnel. But the water isn't wet. One boy who escaped said it felt like hands pulling at his ankles, stroking his face. When he got out, the doll was gone. It reappeared the next week. One man claimed it whispered to him, told him a name. He went home and found a photo of a sister he'd never known he had. She'd drowned before he was born. Locals avoid the tunnel. Call the doll Ame Niñote Rain Doll. No shrine accepts it. No priest will move it. And every rainy season, it creeps closer to the mouth of the tunnel. Waiting. The Girl in the Hotel Room Painting. In a mid-range business hotel in Fukuoka, room 913 is never assigned. It exists cleaned, maintained, the sheets change daily, but no guest stays there, at least, not officially. The staff don't speak of it. The door stays locked. But sometimes, late at night, the elevator opens on the 9th floor without anyone pressing the button, and the hallway lights flicker, just once. The only thing inside room 913 is a painting. It's nothing special. A framed canvas above the bed, showing a girl in a school uniform sitting beneath a cherry blossom tree. Her face is turned, her hands are folded in her lap. The background is dull and gray, the blossoms faint. It looks unfinished, but the longer you look, the more the details shift. Guests who've accidentally been placed there, usually during overbookings or staff errors, report the same pattern. First, the painting looks different. Then, they dream of the girl sitting on the bed, facing away. Then, they wake up to find the room cold and the girl missing from the painting. One man tried to take a photo of the painting. His camera only captured the bed. No frame, no wall, just rumpled sheets and something under them. A woman who checked out after one night left behind a single note, written backward on the mirror. She paints with what's left. The hotel has repainted the room, changed the furniture, removed the painting 3 times. It always comes back. They don't know who painted it. There are no artist records. The style doesn't match anything in their inventory. But behind the canvas, someone once found an inscription in chalk. Don't face her. She isn't done yet. The room is still there, empty. Unless you knock. And hear knocking back, not from the door, from inside the frame. The Girl in the Hotel Room Painting. In a mid-range business hotel in Fukuoka, room 913 is never assigned. It exists cleaned, maintained, the sheets change daily, but no guest stays there, at least, not officially. The staff don't speak of it. The door stays locked. But sometimes, late at night, the elevator opens on the 9th floor without anyone pressing the button, and the hallway lights flicker, just once. The only thing inside room 913 is a painting. It's nothing special. A framed canvas above the bed, showing a girl in a school uniform sitting beneath a cherry blossom tree. Her face is turned, her hands are folded in her lap. The background is dull and gray, the blossoms faint. It looks unfinished, but the longer you look, the more the details shift. Guests who've accidentally been placed there, usually during overbookings or staff errors, report the same pattern. First, the painting looks different. Then, they dream of the girl sitting on the bed, facing away. Then, they wake up to find the room cold and the girl missing from the painting. One man tried to take a photo of the painting. His camera only captured the bed. No frame, no wall, just rumpled sheets and something under them. A woman who checked out after one night left behind a single note, written backward on the mirror. She paints with what's left. The hotel has repainted the room, changed the furniture, removed the painting 3 times. It always comes back. They don't know who painted it. There are no artist records. The style doesn't match anything in their inventory. But behind the canvas, someone once found an inscription in chalk. Don't face her. She isn't done yet. The room is still there, empty. Unless you knock. And hear knocking back, not from the door, from inside the frame. The Shrine of the Wrong Name. In Niigata, there's a path through a cedar grove that ends at a tiny, unregistered shrine. It looks abandoned, roof sagging, moss on the stones, a torii gate leaning slightly, as if trying to flee. But someone maintains the offering box. Someone lights the incense. Someone leaves fresh paper charms at the foot of the altar. There's no sign, no plaque. Only a wooden board nailed to the shrine door with a name written in fading ink. But the name is always wrong. Not misspelled. Yours? People who find the shrine report the same uncanny moment. They step through the gate, look at the board, and see their own name full, accurate, even if they never told anyone. Even if they just moved to town. Even if it's a nickname only one person used. The next day, the name vanishes, replaced by someone else's. A boy once carved his name deeper into the board, thinking it was a prank. The next morning, his name was missing from every document, school records, family registry, social media. He existed, but no one remembered him. Some say the shrine is not for prayer, but for reassignment. If you're lost, it remembers. If you're forgotten, it fills the space. And if you've done something no one else knows about, it offers a quiet deal. One name for another. But the worst part? Someone else might come by the next day and see your name. And once they speak it aloud, you're the one behind the door. The man in the convenience store security feed. It started in Nagoya. A small chain convenience store with a standard layout, nothing special except that every Thursday, at 3 a.m. sharp, the security footage glitches. Not everywhere. Just one corner of the store. Cameras show a man standing motionless by the drink coolers. Always the same spot, always facing the mirror near the gum rack. He never appears on the floor, only on the camera feed. Employees have checked, walked to the exact spot, seen no one, but the screen still shows him. Black jacket, pale face, no expression. A manager once reached through the frame just to prove it was a glitch and the feed flickered. The man's head turned, very slightly. The manager left his job that night. Over time, patterns emerged. The lights flicker 2 seconds before the feed activates. The door chime rings even though no one enters. The clock on the camera overlay freezes. One night, a new employee printed a still frame and brought it home. The next day, he wasn't in the footage, but the man in the black jacket was wearing his name tag. The store no longer reviews footage after 2:59 a.m. No one talks about it, but the feed is still running. And sometimes, when you buy a drink and glance at the monitor by the register, you might catch it. A man, facing away, wearing your coat, and when you blink, the screen is empty. But the mirror across the store still holds a second you. The man in the convenience store security feed. It started in Nagoya. A small chain convenience store with a standard layout, nothing special except that every Thursday, at 3 a.m. sharp, the security footage glitches. Not everywhere. Just one corner of the store. Cameras show a man standing motionless by the drink coolers. Always the same spot, always facing the mirror near the gum rack. He never appears on the floor, only on the camera feed. Employees have checked, walked to the exact spot, seen no one, but the screen still shows him. Black jacket, pale face, no expression. A manager once reached through the frame just to prove it was a glitch and the feed flickered. The man's head turned, very slightly. The manager left his job that night. Over time, patterns emerged. The lights flicker 2 seconds before the feed activates. The door chime rings even though no one enters. The clock on the camera overlay freezes. One night, a new employee printed a still frame and brought it home. The next day, he wasn't in the footage, but the man in the black jacket was wearing his name tag. The store no longer reviews footage after 2:59 a.m. No one talks about it, but the feed is still running. And sometimes, when you buy a drink and glance at the monitor by the register, you might catch it. A man, facing away, wearing your coat, and when you blink, the screen is empty. But the mirror across the store still holds a second you, the room without corners. In the outskirts of Hiroshima, there's a traditional in-family run, quiet, ordinary. All the rooms are the same, except room 6. It looks like every other room on the surface tatami mats, low table, sliding door, but there are no corners. The walls are subtly curved. The ceiling slopes in a way that's mathematically incorrect. Your eyes can't rest. They keep searching for structure, for edges, and find none. Guests who stay there report dreams that never start, just continue. A hallway with no doors, a tea ceremony with no host, a memory from someone else's life. And always, in the dream, a humming sound, low, wet, circular. One guest tried to measure the room. Every time he turned around, the tape read a different number. He gave up when his ruler measured longer on the floor than on the wall. The innkeeper won't speak about the room, only that it's for those passing through. When asked what that means, she replied, "Not everyone who stays here was meant to stay real." Once, the room was sealed, no guests, but the sounds started knocking from inside the walls, not frantic, just polite. As if something in the room was waiting for the shape of a guest it could finally wear. If you sleep there, don't close your eyes completely, because the ceiling bends closer when you do, and the floor starts breathing. The house that appears in dreams. Across Japan, scattered across forums and late-night calls to paranormal hotlines, there are accounts of a house, always the same house that people dream about without ever having seen it in waking life. They call it Yume no Ii, the dream house. It's a 2-story home, traditional, faded wooden exterior, one paper lantern swaying in an unfelt wind. Inside, it's silent. Tatami mats, a broken clock, a hallway that goes on too long, and always a mirror in the entryway, cracked diagonally like something once struck it from behind. People who've never met, in different cities, describe it identically, and they always wake up at the same point just before opening the door at the end of the hallway. One man dreamed about the house 5 nights in a row. On the 6th night, he didn't wake up. He was found asleep at his desk, eyes open, heartbeat normal, but completely unresponsive. He came to 3 days later, disoriented, whispering, "It's not a dream if someone else is waiting there first." In 2019, a woman in Sendai began painting it. She claimed she was just trying to remember what it smelled like. But her paintings began to change. The house's windows showed figures, not hers. Not human. She stopped sleeping. A group of university students created a survey to track occurrences of the dream house. They collected 413 matching reports. The project was abandoned when one of the team members stopped recognizing her own home. Now, those who know the house try not to think of it too hard. Not at dusk, not near mirrors, because thinking about it too clearly seems to make it more real. And some believe it's not in your dreams at all. It's real, and we just haven't woken up yet. The tape that plays silence. In an old secondhand store in Nara, buried beneath boxes of VHS cassettes no one wanted, there was a tape with no label. Just a black sticker with one word scrawled in fading marker, "Listen." The clerk gave it away for free. The tape plays nothing, no audio, just static. But those who listen to it with headphones begin to hear things not on the tape, but in their homes, in the walls, in their own thoughts. Soft knocking, a door creaking open downstairs, a phone ringing with no number. Then, silence. One man tried to digitize the audio. The resulting file corrupted every system it touched. The waveform briefly visible looked like a face. Not human, just symmetrical enough to be wrong. Another listener reported that, after the 10th playback, The silence began to respond, mirroring her breathing, then beating like a second heart. She destroyed the tape, burned it, smashed it. The next morning, a new tape was in her mailbox. Same sticker, different word. Again. Some say it's not a recording, but a listener itself. Not a medium for sound, but a trap for perception. Once you've heard its silence, something hears you back. And the tape is still out there, passed hand to hand, uploaded and deleted, forgotten and found. If someone offers you a tape and says, "Don't play it, don't laugh," because it's not about what's on it. It's about what's already in your head, waiting for silence to be just loud enough to answer. The bridge that only exists in fog. In a small town near Matsue, there's a legend of a bridge that only appears when the fog is thick enough to hide the river. Locals call it Kiribashit Fog Bridge. It's never in the same place twice. Sometimes it spans a dry canal, sometimes it hovers above a flooded field, but always, it's made of black stone, ancient and smooth, and lined with lanterns that glow even in daylight. People who see it describe a compulsion to cross. And some do, but no one sees them reach the other side. They just vanish into the mist. A boy who attempted to film the bridge found his footage looped. The first 10 seconds play forward, the next 10 in reverse, over and over. When slowed down, a voice can be heard. "We only take the ones who already left." The local shrine has a single artifact said to be from the bridge. A cane, carved from wood no botanist can identify. It's warm to the touch and leaves no shadow. One priest believes the bridge is not for travel, but for retrieval. A final kindness for those lost in grief, longing, or guilt. It doesn't take you anywhere new. It just returns you to the moment you refuse to let go. So if you see a bridge in the fog, ask yourself, what are you still holding on to? And if the answer walks across ahead of you, don't follow.